some logic, which is baffling an awful lot of people in this part of the world. I mean, essentially you're asking for a sovereign nation to surrender whatever leverage it has over the Strait of Hormuz under the threat of a total infrastructure collapse, essentially at the barrel of a gun. I mean, this is the absolute definition of 19th century gunboat diplomacy.
Absolutely not. You and I see this very differently. You're asking a sovereign nation to honor international law. Iran doesn't have any right to control the Strait of Hormuz. The entire world believes that, except for Iran. So we're not asking them to comply with international law.
You're in Doha. What happens if the US decimates Iran's grid tonight? I mean, the fallout will be on multiple levels. It will be humanitarian, it'll be environmental. Obviously, there'll be a military toll to all of this as well. I mean, but you know as well as I do that this will hit America's allies first. Is that reasonable collateral in the America First doctrine?
I think the question, and I think part of the equation for the United States State Department and the United States military is determining how much they honestly believe the Iranian military has left. And while Iran has threatened all kinds of activity, and they certainly have some missiles and some drones left, how farly degraded are they? And if the United States has some confidence that their missile program has been degraded to the point, because even when they had thousands of missiles and thousands of drones, they were failing at a 92% rate. They were being shot down at a 92% rate. So if at this point they have, and I'm making these numbers up, they're based on nothing, but if they have 300 drones left and 100 missiles left, then 92% of those.
A lot of what ifs.
No, they aren't what ifs from my standpoint, because let me finish the point. I don't have the information that the State Department or the Defense Department has. I'm giving you numbers for percentage standpoints, not because of what if. I'm just trying to make it easy for you so you can follow me. But obviously, the military and the State Department is going to have much more information than I am.
Is that information shared with the GCC briefly, do you think?
I would think, to some extent, yes, probably not in its entirety, but the President of the United States has a great relationship with the leadership in Saudi, with Qatar, with UAE, and throughout the region. So I would think, all of them are concerned what's going to happen in the next 24 hours. I don't think they're going to be left with a blindfold on.
All right, Tim, many thanks. Tim Constantine, the Washington Times writer, and also host of the Capitol Hill Show. Pleasure. Thank you. Now, Abbas Akundi is the former Minister for Roads and Urban Development in Iran. He's also a professor at Tehran University. He joins us from the Iranian capital. Welcome to the program. Can I start by asking you to reflect upon this looming ultimatum from the US president? Ahead of that, we've already started to see key infrastructure hit in multiple locations across the country. How are you reflecting on this moment?
Thank you for having me. That's a very, very hard situation for us, because I'm as a minister of infrastructure. I know how difficult it is building this infrastructure, particularly we build all these infrastructures under the US sanctions. So every meter that we have built.
Hello. My name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are doing a live stream on April 7th. We are live streaming on YouTube and on Rumble, simulcasting on X Spaces. Thank you for joining. You can also watch the live stream on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can watch both versions, the large screen and the telemetry screen. The telemetry is on YouTube and on my website. Please share the links. Ask your social media to follow me. I would greatly appreciate it so we can grow the channel, so I can reach a larger audience to explain what's going on in the world. I do a mosaic analysis, and I tell you how to trade this information so it doesn't hurt you financially. You can benefit from the news. In addition, I also tell you how to improve your health. So thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. If you share the links and ask your social media to follow me, and you can follow me many different ways. You can follow me on TikTok, on Substack, on Buy Me a Coffee, and Patreon. You can also follow me on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble, X, GETTR, Podomatic, and Apple Podcast. Lots of ways to follow my work. And it's all for free. All these videos, all the archives, the audio versions, all of it is for free. So please help support the work by sharing the links And if you would like to donate, you can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and you could be a paid member to my Substack channel and my Patreon channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. With that said, I have great products on my store that helps to fund the work that I do. So please get those great products. Some of those great products that I have are the vitamin C and magnesium. Vitamin C and magnesium will help to boost up your immune system, help with brain function, and help with your skin health. You can stack it with or take it separately, the magnesium and zinc. This will help to boost up your immune system and brain function. There's a book that came out recently. This book is called The Invincible Brain, right? This was written by an MD and Ph.D. It was published this year, and it proves what I've been saying for 6 years about how to improve your brain function. So research is now starting to show what I've been telling everybody about how to boost up your brain, but also how to boost up your immune system. And I'm going to go throughout the broadcast how your organ systems, if they're healthy, can improve brain function, including your kidneys. A lot of people wouldn't understand that. Why would your liver and your kidneys affect brain function? Because they detoxify your blood. And if you have a lot of crap in your blood, guess what? You have leaky blood-brain barrier that leads to inflammation in the brain. And that's why people are going to start getting early onset of dementia. So it's really important that you pay attention to me, because a lot of people are going to have brain function issues because of the aftershock of 2020. All right? I've been warning people for 6 years on this. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin C and magnesium and the magnesium and zinc. You're going to want to stack these different supplements the way I'm going to tell you throughout this broadcast to help with your brain function and your other organ systems. All right? So please go to my store. Make sure you use discount 5 because I want you to save some money. All caps, discount 5. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So the big news today is that Trump basically warned Iran, 8 p.m. Eastern time, if there's no deal, power plants and bridges will be destroyed. He also stated that their civilization is going to be destroyed soon if they don't come in and make a go to deal. All right. So we're open in the United States in terms of markets. Right now, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,582 with a VIX of 25. All right. We're below that 6,600 resistance support level. All right. Yesterday we traded above it. We closed above it. And I said that hopefully that would hold as a support level. It broke again. So now it's a resistance level. So 6,600 on the S&P 500 is a major resistance level. And you have another support level at 6,450 and 6,140. Write this down, because when we hit Iran, there is a big chance that the equity market is going to sell off. But don't be fearful, buy. Do not be fearful, buy. Do not bet against the United States. Trust me on this. Now, the euro is trading at 115, stable. It's been stable for quite a few trading sessions. The Japanese yen, stable at 159. Another sign that the currency markets are stable and the United States is the safe haven. Bitcoin trading at 68,000. Oh, I thought Bitcoin was supposed to be a safe haven. Not so much. Now, natural gas is trading at 2.858. It was trading lower in pre-session trading, and now it's ticking back up because of the news from Trump. If you want a long natural gas, you want to take a look at Boyle ETF. It's a leveraged ETF. Now, the intraday, the pre-session trading for oil was going up. It's now trading at 115.81, but the UCO leveraged ETF went as high as 42.52, and now it's trading at 41.95. Take a look at UCO. That's going to be very volatile, especially as we get closer and closer to further operations in Iran with the power plants and the other infrastructure. Okay, now Gush and DRIP, these are two ETFs that are tied to investing in companies that actually explore and produce oil. All right, Gush is longing those energy companies. DRIP is the ETF to short them. Gush peaked at 44.59, and then now it's drifting back down to 43.94. There was a big jump today. And DRIP, which is the inverse, dropped down to 4.09, and now it's trading at 4.13. These are signs that people are moving into energy. There is a herd moving into energy companies, so it's going to benefit Gush. The ETF, leveraged ETF, I believe it's 2 times. If you want a more pure play for ETF for oil, you want to take a look at it's leveraged UCO, okay? But it's going to be very volatile. I suspect that oil is going to peak. It's going to pop, probably close to 120 for WTI. Right now, WTI is trading higher than Brent, which is not normal. And then I think it's going to rapidly go down. So you got to be very careful if you're long in oil. All right. All right. So with that, that's my take. The equity market is probably going to sell off today continually, and I would not be surprised if VIX spikes in 35. All right. Not today, but maybe tomorrow. And you have to remember, these operations are going to be happening at night, so we're not going to see U.S. trading effects directly until tomorrow. All right, so this is definitely going to be an emerging event that's taking place. With that, let's listen into Fox Business. They're interviewing Jack Keane, General Jack Keane. This was this morning.
This is a critical period. They have a period of, till tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I gave them an extension. They asked for an extension of 7 days. 10 days is actually today, so I gave them 11, I guess, indirectly. I can tell you they're negotiating, we think, in good faith. We're going to find out 8 o'clock Eastern time, and after that, they're going to have no bridges. They're going to have no power plants. Stone Ages, the entire country can be taken out in one night.
That's President Trump reasserting his deadline of 8 p.m. tonight for Tehran to strike a deal with the United States and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or face the decimation of all of its bridges and power plants. Tehran reportedly rejected a proposal for a 45-day ceasefire. Instead, it is coming up and offering a 10-point plan that demands an immediate end of this conflict, safe passage through the Gulf and reconstruction, and lifting sanctions. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst. He is chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. And we want to get your take. We don't know if, in fact, we can get confirmation on this, but it appears that the Iranians are coming up with this 10-point peace proposal that they say they would drop their demand for reparations and drop their demand for U.S. military withdrawal from the Persian Gulf. Your thoughts on where we are this morning, sir?
Well, I don't think we really know. I mean,
they need to give up their nuclear material.
Certainly, the pressure that President Trump has put on the Iranians is significant, and that is likely getting their attention and maybe getting to a better place than where this deal was a few days ago. It remains to be seen. I mean, I do have some concerns about a deal because it may indeed give Iran a lifeline. Eventually, they get sanctions relief, they survive, and they're going to trumpet the fact that they stopped the war because they controlled the Straits of Hormuz, and they were able to leverage that. We'll see what's in the details of the deal. Listen, I have confidence in President Trump. This is the man that rejected the lousy deal that Obama had constructed, which was a pathway to a nuclear weapon. He saw it for what it was, and it gave him, by rejecting the deal, the opportunity to impose significant sanctions on the Iranians, which certainly helped to decapitate them financially. So the details of the deal is what really matters here, if we in fact get one. Given the pressure on the Iranians, I suspect they are negotiating quite genuinely here, because I'm convinced they want this to stop. I know for a fact that our bombing last night was the highest level of the war last night.
Wow.
So there's huge pressure on them as a result of what's taken place.
Yeah.
I do have a bias here. I would like to continue this to the end, to the 2 to 3 weeks, so we can accomplish all of our assigned objectives, and then try to make a deal with the Iranians when we really have got them back on their heels, close to an economic collapse, and potentially, eventually, a change in a regime that would take place down the road a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
but we'll see what we have here. The details matter.
Of course. Seems like
that's a fact.
That's where the president is as well. Now, you mentioned last night the Israeli Defense Forces reporting that it struck one of Iran's last remaining compounds, which produced chemical components. I want to get your take on that, and then I'd love to get your assessment about what the president is asking for in the budget, General, because you've got non-defense spending proposed to be down, and OMB chief voted the fiscal 26 appropriations enacted the first real cut to spending in 12 years. He said this new budget would mean Golden Dome, troop pay raise, space, maritime dominance, shipbuilding, critical munitions, combat medicine, F-47 Homeland Security nuclear programs, unmanned and counter-drone systems, and artificial intelligence. With your knowledge of really what's needed, sir, what is your take on what the president is asking for in this defense budget?
Well, the president...
Yo, new beat, new lyrics.
Well, the president and his team really have done some good work here. They clearly understand the atrophy that has taken place in our industrial base for the United States military. And this war obviously is educating everybody on the stresses that is creating for our magazine depth. That means the amount of munitions, the amount of weapon systems that we have available to us. Our budget is built around a one-war strategy, and it's been this way for years, and a quick war at that. Any protracted war, and even that goes on for weeks and months, would begin to stress our capability. And we're just fighting one war with no ground component, and it's essentially an air and maritime war here, and it's stressing our magazine depth quite significantly. Can you imagine if we were fighting in two places and we had protraction? The National Defense Commission I was on believed that we would not be able to cope with two wars at the same time. That's the reality of it. So this budget is looking clearly at our deficiencies. While we're championing our military and its capabilities and this brilliant operation we just conducted to rescue our airmen, to be sure.
Yeah.
But we also have to be honest with ourselves about what limitations we have. So a $250 billion plus up in the budget itself is a down payment to do that. And then a $350 billion on top of that reconciliation bill begins to get us healthy. And we have to continue it over a 4 or 5 year period if we're going to dig ourselves out of this hole that we dug ourselves in.
Right.
It was the Obama cuts that did it, following the...
My brother served in the military, all right, in the Army for 3 years, all right? And it was in between, right after the Gulf War and before 9/11, all right? And what he saw when he was in the military, when he enlisted and then when he was discharged, he saw a major change taking place and it was under the Clinton administration. All right. Yes, Obama did stop funding for the military, but the ethos of the warrior ethos, as Pete Hegseth talks about, was starting to change under Clinton with the don't ask, don't tell policy, and this hubris of you don't need to invest in the military because the Berlin Wall fell. We were so successful in Gulf War under George Bush Sr. And so there was this mindset of we don't need to invest as much in the mechanized warfare, big ships, big tanks, and all this stuff. And during that time period, there was this transition where the soldiers, today you see the soldiers wearing backpacks and a lot of the stuff is on a vest. A lot of their equipment is built into their vest and their body armor, all right? But back then, when he served, it was more of the old style around the belt. And they were slowly transitioning into this vest wearing kind of apparatus, which came from the Special Forces. Special Forces had that equipment first, and then it started to trickle down into the average service member. All right, so what we see today was really early Special Force type equipment. But as we transitioned with George Bush Jr. and Rumsfeld, there was further push of having more of a quick, lethal force, and there was more money spent on special forces and less on mechanized. But as we move towards the war with China, as we've been depleted because of the 20-year plus war in the Middle East under Bush and Obama and even Trump 1.0, we have degraded the military in such a way where we do not have the mechanized force that we need to fight China. This started not under Obama. It started under Clinton. So the reality of the situation is this. This problem that we have with the military, in terms of the war ethos, in terms of mechanized warfare, has been in the cause of the decisions of Congress and the decisions of many, many different presidents, going all the way back to the mid-1990s.
With 9/11 wars, the budget control agreement, sequestration kneecapped us, and we have been trying to recover ever since.
Yeah.
This really puts us on a path to that recovery.
Look, I think we also have to be honest about what our adversaries are doing in the middle of all of this, right? I mean, a new report suggests that Russia provided Iran with a detailed list of 55 critical energy targets in Israel. Ukrainian intelligence says that those targeted sites were divided into critical production facilities, major urban and industrial energy hubs, local infrastructure. And the Journal this morning is out with a piece saying China helped cushion the blow of sanctions and fund Iran's war machine. We know that China relies heavily on the Iranian oil, buy 90% of the oil, non-sanctioned oil, and they go around the situation to buy that oil. So your reaction to dealing with our adversaries who've clearly supported Iran in all of this?
We should not be surprised at all by this. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they're all joined at the hip here.
Yeah.
They have their own interests in their geographic spheres of influence, to be sure, but they have joined together because they recognize that together they can exploit the vulnerabilities of the United States as the world's global leader. And they did that rather significantly in a previous administration. They clearly took advantage of us. But look what has happened since President Trump has come into power, and now in his second year. They've lost their base in Venezuela. This is China in particular, Russia as well. Not a military base, but their base of influence in the region
That's
itself, and the possibility of Cuba going the same route, really quite significant. Russia is bogged down in its 5th year at war. They thought they could take Ukraine in a few weeks. Here it is in their 5th year. And if you just look at it, what progress have they made over the last two years? Not much at all. A little bit over 1% in additional territory. There's no doubt that they're not making anywhere near the progress that they want to make. And here's Iran. The president has taken Iran out to stop them from being a predator in the region. They don't want to lose this footprint in the Middle East. What they see is the regime in Iran getting in so much trouble, not just militarily, but economically, that it will collapse. And they will lose this foothold that they have.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about here. They're going to the UN to try to get resolutions here to stop the war.
Okay.
They want to stop the war because they're afraid they're going to lose their ally and partner here. And yes, they are all in to help Iran for sure, as you just enumerated.
Yeah. Do you think that the president is going to extend this deadline tonight, or do you think 8 o'clock comes and goes and the president said he could take out all of Iran in a matter of 4 hours? What do you think happens tonight, General, real quick?
Well, we don't have a deal until we do. And you know, the pressure is on, and it could be the last minute, things reverse and there is a deal.
Okay.
And as I said, we got to see the details of it. The president, if he extends it, would only do that because they're close to having something and they just need a little bit more negotiating time. Other than that, I think he keeps a foot to the metal here and keeps driving. If he says, one thing we know about this president, if he says he's going to do something, he has a tendency to do it.
That's
So let's
absolutely right.
believe what he's going to do, and I think the Iranians believe it.
Yeah, for sure. General, always a pleasure. Thanks.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Clarity Factor. This is a very powerful neurostack. What this will do is get rid of that brain fog, allow you to concentrate on tasks. And over time, what's going to happen is your dendritic connections between neurons are going to improve. You're going to be thinking faster and you're going to have better memory. Take Clarity Factor every day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. And if you've been paying attention to me, you need to improve your other organ systems to also improve your brain function, like your liver and your kidneys. Why? Because they filter your blood. When you have a lot of compounds in the bloodstream that can cause inflammation, you can have a leaky blood-brain barrier that leads to inflammation. And bringing down inflammation at the brain level is super important to having longevity and reducing dementia. So please pay attention to me. Get the great products that I offer and help with your brain function. Clarity Factor, very powerful. And you can stack it with Myotrol. Myotrol helps to build muscle. When you get older, your genes start to methylate. And when that happens, is that the gene expression starts to get shut down. And that's just the normal process of aging. But you can slow down methylation and sometimes reverse it. Take the polyphenols, the flavonoids, and the lignans that are in Myotrol. Take it every day. Do some resistance training. You don't have to do resistance training every day, but take the Myotrol every day. Do some resistance training maybe 3 or 4 times a week. And you're going to build muscle and maintain muscle. This is super important for people that are 40 years of age or older, male or female. You need to build muscle. Now, you get a lot of benefits by building muscle. You'll be moving around more. Your bone density will be better. Your posture will be better if you focus on back muscles. By having better posture, you're going to have better lymphatic flow, so your immune system will be better. You'll have better venous return flow, so your cardiovascular fitness will be better. A lot of people don't realize that when you're slouching over, it's actually affecting your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Poor back posture affects your immune system. Hello? I mean, come on. So Myotrol also is very important if you are an athlete, younger or older. You'll benefit from taking Myotrol. Now, there's an added benefit. Myotrol, by building muscle, will allow your body to create what is called myokines. These are compounds that will help to build muscle, but also help with neural protection. And And this is the reason why that actually people that have more muscle mass when they get older actually have better brain function. Because when you have more muscle, you have better perfusion, your heart's healthier, but also your muscles are producing the myokines that are neuroprotective and allow for a microenvironment in your brain to allow for the better dendritic connections to take place. So you're thinking faster and you have better memory. So you get better blood flow to the brain, and you have these myokines that are helping to help to increase the neuro growth factors to allow for the dendritic connections to take hold and to improve. So this is the reason why I have been saying take the Myotrol and the clarity factor together. Clarity factor is the neurostack. Myotrol to build muscle, but it also helps to protect your neurons and allow for your neurons to improve their connections. Now, if you don't pay attention to me, you're going to notice a lot of people, maybe it'll happen to you, I don't know, but you're going to notice a lot of people having early onset of dementia. I'm telling you how to prevent it. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Myotrol, do some resistance training, drink filtered water, and get the clarity factor and drink filtered water. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, Karg Island has been hit by the United States. And we're going to listen to Fox News doing the report on what is the update on Karg Island's destruction by the U.S.
Sources confirming to Fox News that U.S. forces struck dozens of Iranian military targets on Karg Island throughout the night.
So this as we are less than 12 hours away from President Trump's deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face obliteration.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Ames is live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Hey Trey, what can you tell us?
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Fox News can confirm overnight the United States hit dozens of targets on Iran's Karg Island. This is the island responsible for more than 90% of Iran's oil exports. Fox's Jennifer Griffin says the targets included bunkers, radar stations, and ammunition storage. As this was taking place, the clock is ticking as it relates to that deadline President Trump laid out Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, just about 12 hours from now, before Iran must make a deal with the United States, or the president says he will order strikes against Iranian power plants and bridges. This is what the president had to say yesterday from the White House.
We have a plan, because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to. We don't want that to happen.
I want to pull up here the demands for the United States and Iran. You can see here some big differences. The U.S. is calling for the dismantlement of Iran's nuclear facilities, zero enriched uranium, missile constraints, the Strait of Hormuz being opened, and an end to Iran's support of groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Now, the Iranians are calling for guarantees as it relates to no further attacks, full sanctions relief, war compensation, a payment system for the Strait of Hormuz, and finally, the removal of regional U.S. bases. Now, the president told me over the weekend that Iran isn't even negotiating anymore about their nuclear program and that they've conceded already on many issues. They said that a variety of different points the Iranians came to the table, but they have lost that leverage, according to the president. With this talk of diplomacy, we're also learning more about the daring rescue that happened over the weekend to save a stranded U.S. airman. High-level U.S. sources telling Fox News that while the airman rescue was ongoing, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper directed a strike on an IRGC headquarters in an underground facility in Tehran. B-2 bombers were using bunker buster bombs, the same weapons used during Operation Midnight Hammer, to obliterate that IRGC headquarters. This just gives you a sense of how kinetic the activity is in Iran at the moment. The United States maintains the ability to operate freely in the skies of Iran, and while the B-2 bombers were dropping bombs on a target outside of the Iranian capital, south of the city of Isfahan, there were hundreds of U.S. Special Forces rescuing their stranded colleague. Guys?
I'm sorry, Trey, there's some breaking news on Truth Social. Ainsley, do you want to read that?
Sure. So Donald Trump just posted this. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran.
So this is clearly an escalation. As everyone knows, the president has an 8 p.m. deadline. He talked about the power energy plants being targets of the rail stations as well. We know the notice from the Israeli...
As of right now, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,556. The next support level is 6,450. All right? It's very possible that we test that support level. VIX is starting to creep up. It's almost at 27, and WTI oil futures are trading at 116, and natural gas is creeping up and it's trading at 2.876. We may see tonight close to 3.0 for natural gas, and I would not be surprised if we hit the resistance level of 120 for oil futures.
The civilians do not get on the railroad because America, the Israelis, we don't target civilians. There's only one side that is doing that. But the president is making it very clear that these options are still on the table. He does not want death and destruction, but the deadline is the deadline, and it doesn't seem like he's going to move it.
No, and Trey Ying's still with us live from Tel Aviv. Trey, what's your reaction to this new post?
Look, I spoke with President Trump over the weekend, and I can tell you that he's not bluffing as it relates to targeting Iran's energy infrastructure, power plants, and bridges. He was very serious. If the Iranians are unwilling to make a deal, there will be extremely heavy consequences. The president in this post on Truth Social, though, says a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. And so certainly questions to ask the president today about the context of this post on Truth Social and possible plans for the United States and what the list of targets may look like and the type of munition that would be used against the Iranians if he moves forward with strikes against the regime. Again, this is the final moment here, an off-ramp for the Iranians. The president, it appears in this post on Truth Social, is once again putting the most amount of pressure possible on the regime in order to encourage them to make an agreement. The sense that I got from the president is that he doesn't want to have to take this action, but he is willing to do it if the Iranians are still unwilling to make a good faith deal. I do want to just give you a little bit of additional information that I'm getting from Israeli sources about the energy program in Iran. A senior Israeli defense official telling me just now, the Islamic regime's greatest vulnerability is energy. They describe the energy system in Iran as the Achilles heel for the Islamic Republic because roughly 50% of Iran's GDP is based on their energy program. And this is part of the reason that the president is focusing his threats on the energy infrastructure inside of Iran. The president understands that when it comes to the Iranian regime, the two things that are keeping this regime afloat are their energy infrastructure that is used to funnel money to the IRGC and the weapons that are currently being used against U.S. forces and allies across the region, and the oil infrastructure. And as Fox can confirm, overnight, dozens of U.S. strikes targeted Karg Island, where 90% of Iran's oil exports are located. This gives you a sense that the United States is...
All right, I'm going to interrupt Trey here. You can see on the telemetry for the CL futures, which is the WTI futures for oil, you see that red line on the dashboard. That red line is the peak of the fib sequence. So 119.48 was the previous high from this crisis. We're going to be testing that, especially if Trump hits Iran. All right? So this is a reason why I made the telemetry chart. So you can see in real time how news breaking news can affect the market. All right. Now, right now, UCO ETF for longing oil futures is trading at 42.41. I would not be surprised that it trades in the 43 or 44 handle when Trump hits Iran.
Once again to send a final message to the Iranian regime. The president on Truth Social just moments ago sending a final message to the Iranian regime.
Yeah, he sure has. And certainly we're talking about an escalation of significance here. And as you point out, Trey, so succinctly, Iran is a one commodity economy. It's also tied to the global market. But when you, let's go back to this post we just got, because that is strong language, because many wondered whether or not the power plants and bridges would have any military nexus or not. A military nexus would be a military target, but while a civilian one perhaps would not be. How do you read this post as it relates to whether or not this is confined to the military nexus or the entire country? And just to, again, for our viewers, just giving us breaking news, let us give it to you again. He says this: a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran.
Hey, Trey, also Iran is urging, this is what I had heard from another agency, a news agency earlier, urging their youth to gather as human shields and form these human chains around the power plants.
Yeah, I saw those reports as well. If they do that, that is illegal under international law. You can't use human shields on the battlefield. But we should note here a few things as it relates to the president's post on Truth Social. What the president knows and what the public knows are two very different things. There are a lot of conversations and preparations going on behind the scenes. Even as we are talking right now, a very high-ranking source just sent me a screenshot of the president's post here and is typing right now. There is an understanding that both Israel and the United States, as Operation Epic Fury continues, are working side by side on an hourly basis to prepare a variety of contingency plans on the battlefield. And if we just step back for a moment, we're analyzing this post on Truth Social, but let's think about what's happened over the past 24 hours. The past 48 hours as well. You had B-2 bombers fly from the United States to Iranian territory and drop bunker buster bombs on the outskirts of Tehran, targeting senior commanders in an underground bunker. I am told just right now, a senior Israeli official confirming to Fox News that the Israelis have started strikes against Iranian rail infrastructure. Remember earlier today, the Israelis warned civilians to stay off the trains in Iran. They have started to target the bridges of the rail system in Iran as we speak. Additionally, you have these strikes overnight against Karg Island, the largest export facility in Iranian territory, accounting for around 90% of Iran's oil exports. And you have ongoing U.S. and Israeli strikes against Iranian military infrastructure. What we are looking at right now is a staging operation. The United States and Israel are preparing. If a deal is not made, there will be an increase in strikes against the Iranian regime. The president described it as power plant day and bridge day, to go after this critical infrastructure inside of Iran.
Exactly. And if they don't make a deal, if they don't capitulate, if they don't surrender their nuclear material, after we hit their power plants, after we hit their rail system and their bridges, we're going to start moving with ground forces. We're preparing, if we need to, we're preparing for the ground invasion.
Very interesting here. I spoke with a high-ranking source last night, and I asked what happens next if the president orders these strikes. And they said, again, this is the Achilles heel of the regime, targeting energy infrastructure.
Right.
And
But not just that, not just that. Think about it. And hopefully we're successful, and hopefully Iran collapses and the theocratic regime is gone, never to reconstitute, and the IRGC is destroyed, and the people of Iran, the seculars within Iran, are self-governing. Hopefully that happens. And if it does, every single America First pacifist will be proven wrong. Because what? Prefer to have a theocratic regime threatening the whole world? See? Not only did the ultra-liberal eat itself because of the way they conducted themselves after October 7th of 2023 and the infighting that was taking place, you could see that they were eating their own tail. The ultra-right pacifist is eating its own tail too.
Is force their hand at the negotiating table. Because again, the president has time and time again, even before Operation Epic Fury began, preferred a diplomatic option. But the Iranians have been unwilling to take a diplomatic option, and that is how we ended up in this Operation Epic Fury that is unfolding before our eyes as we speak. But the president very clearly on True Social just moments ago saying, however, now that we have complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. The president looking to the future here and the possibility for the 90 million people that live inside of Iran.
So, Trey, let's step back for a second and provide some context to the audience. And I know you have some similar sources as well. The president has had a host of options on the table. And although we have had superiority when it comes to the skies, and we have taken a lot of targets out, especially people that are within the leadership of the government, as well as the IRGC, terror cells within the country. There were other options that the president had initially that he did not target. And those are humans, as well as different sites, as the president has laid it out with those rails, as well as the energy and the power plants. He saved those because he hoped that there would be some deal. Are we hearing that now we are moving toward those areas? Because it seems like that post would suggest that.
The short answer is yes. Having talked to the president in recent days, it appears if the Islamic Republic is unwilling to make a good faith deal, that everything is on the table for the United States. And you make a very important point. As this operation has developed, the United States and Israel have not only maintained control over the skies of Iran, but they've maintained targeting options. The Islamic Republic doesn't have the same ability as the United States and Israel have. And when we look at what's taking place right now, yesterday the U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said something very important. He said yesterday was the largest bombing campaign since Operation Epic Fury began. He said today will then be the largest bombing campaign since this operation began. This gives you a sense that each and every day the United States and Israel are increasing the amount of munitions and bombs that they are dropping on the Islamic Republic, military targets, and officials there. On the other side, the Islamic regime is unable to keep up the amount of fire that they were able to launch in the early days of this war. And again, this speaks to the air superiority of the United States. So as the United States is increasing their targeting ability, the Iranian regime is decreasing theirs. They just simply cannot get off the amount of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones they could launch in the early days. They still pose a threat to the region. This is not over. But we're looking at a crisscross pattern here.
For the ones that are watching the telemetry live feed, take a look at that CL oil futures. It's getting close to 117 as it's approaching that resistance level of 119.48.
This is getting stronger. The Iranians are getting weaker.
All right. Trey Yates, live for us in Tel Aviv.
Thanks, Trey.
Breaking news. Trey, thank you very much.
Want even more Fox News on YouTube? Become a Fox News Patriot today. Click join to find out how.
All right, we're going to go to Lindsey Graham on what he says. He says, blow them up. I personally believe that Iran's going to get hit tonight. All right? I think the energy markets are prepared for it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. You can stack this with the collagen, which is a powder, and you can also stack it with the pain relief product that I have that I'll talk about later. But collagen will help to remodel your joints, either because of arthritis or because of a sports injury. The earlier that you take this, after you start feeling pain or problems moving the joint, the better, all right? Because if you don't treat it, if you don't help to remodel the joint, then what will happen is you'll have further erosion of the joint, and it'll be harder to remodel, up to the point where you may not have any cartilage left. So it's really important to follow my advice. The moment you start having problems, you want to be taking collagen, all right? Now, what this will do is it will remodel your joints by using collagen type 2 and glucosamine. In addition, it'll help to remodel the cartilage. It'll also help to utilize glucosamine and ACAN to cushion the joint. It will block EP4, which reduces inflammation and some of the pain. And the collagen will block MMP3 and MMP13, which reduces further erosion of the cartilage. So this is a great way to help build your joints either through some sort of sports injury or through arthritis. You can stack it with the collagen, and you can stack it with the pain relief, all right? Now the pain relief, super strong relief. What this is a topical. If you have a headache, put it on your temples, on your forehead, and on your neck muscles and shoulder muscles, and it'll relieve the headache within about 90 seconds. If you have a tension headache. Super strong relief will help to reduce pain with arthritis. If you have a pulled muscle or sore muscles after a workout, apply it topically on the sore muscles and it will relieve that pain. If you have a sprain or a bruise, it'll help to relieve the pain. So this is a great product. You can take it separately, but you can also stack it with the collagen. You take the collagen, 2 droppers each day, and you apply the super strong relief topically on the area of pain. So this is a great way to reduce pain, but also to help to remodel the joint. And you do some resistance training or some exercises slowly and open up the joint, increase the articulation of the joint over time, and you're sending signals, when you're doing this, you're sending signals to actually remodel that area. Takes time. Sometimes it takes years, but you can remodel the joints. All right. So there's also a protocol to use higher doses of D3 and K2 and calcium with some light resistance training to also remodel the joint area. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take my advice. This is a great way to increase your longevity, to have more vitality. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer that will help to slow down the aging process. All right, let's see what Lindsey Graham says about blow them up.
Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. A lot of people think that you're a hawk, and in many ways you are. You believe radical Islamic terrorists are an existential threat to the world. I agree with you on that point. But even you put out, you are praying for a deal. You want this deal to go through. Yeah. What do you think the odds are?
Yeah,
very low.
Well, I don't know. We'll know pretty soon, won't we, by 8 o'clock tomorrow? Sure, I prefer a deal. And what's the goal of the deal? Is to make sure Iran cannot be the largest state sponsor of terrorism.
Now, here's a little inside baseball. For the ones that are watching the telemetry, take a look at how oil future receded right when it hit just past the 117 mark. And now it's going to drift a little down, and it's going to retest the 117 and most likely surpass it. And the same thing is happening on UCO. It peaked up at 42.56, so that's the new intraday high, and now it's trading at 42.22. So it's going to drift down, and then it's going to retest.
They were for 47 years. They can't have a missile program that can affect Europe or the United States, and they forever will be denied a nuclear weapons capability. The Strait of Hormuz not only has to be open, it can never be controlled again by Iran. All the 60% uranium has to be taken out of Iran. There can't be 1 ounce of this 60% grade uranium left in Iran. That would be a bad outcome. They can make a dirty bomb or one day enrich to 90%. So my goal is to get it right. I prefer diplomacy, but if we have to use military force, we're going to do it. The one thing Trump has tried to do is get it right. Everybody else talked about it, but nobody did a damn thing. Trump has done it right. Their military's been obliterated. The goals of no nukes, no missiles, no state sponsor of terrorism were inside the 10-yard line. That's just the Strait of Hormuz. Right now, they're charging ships, the IRGC, the Iranians, to go through the straits, and they're taking the yuan, not the dollar. One threat of this whole debacle is if we start allowing the Chinese currency to be traded in oil, that will hurt the dollar. In 1974, every barrel of oil sold and traded in the world is traded in dollars.
He's absolutely right. And this positioning is going to help support the petrodollar. Not just that. If we are successful and the infrastructure is not blown up in this region, in the Middle East, what's going to happen is that we're going to be able to leverage our hegemonic power and our petrodollar and circumvent the expansionism of China. If we are unsuccessful in the region, it doesn't matter, because the area is going to be so blown up that it's going to take years to rebuild, and Europe and Asia are going to need to go to Russia and the United States for energy. So the United States is in a win-win situation here.
See, from a dollar to a Chinese yuan, and that's an attack on the dollar. And that needs to end too. So I'm very optimistic that President Trump's going to bring this regime to an end one way or the other. I prefer diplomacy.
And this is the reason why weeks ago, Putin started to telegraph that he was going to use the US dollar. Now he's also using gold too. He's stepping away slowly from BRICS. So people need to pay attention here. Everyone that was saying, oh, the US dollar is going to sell off and the equities are going to die and America's empire is going to end. No, it's not. It's actually going to strengthen. And all of these podcasters that were betting against America, all these podcasters that thought that America was on the super decline internationally, no, they weren't paying attention. Don't bet against America. Now, there are problems in the United States, for sure. Absolutely. There's a big battle between conservatism and ultra-liberals, and the ultra-liberals don't have God, country, and family, and they're destroying from within. And we're trying to solve that problem. And I think eventually America will become more conservative over time, not less. I think postmodernism is going to die out. And there's going to be a rebirth of the Enlightenment. And that there's going to be this idea of virtue, God, country, and family, and property rights, which is all antithetical to Marxism. Marxism doesn't believe in God, country, and family. Marxism believes in taking your property away, so it's not in line with the Enlightenment. So that's where the United States is faltering, but don't bet against America. America will somehow, some way succeed.
We're either going to do a deal that makes sense for the world and the region and for Iran itself, or we're going to blow them up.
It seems to me the two main points that you're focused on and I'm focused on, the Strait of Hormuz must remain open. They should never have the ability to close it. And as it relates to the 60% enriched uranium, which I believe was the predicate for the president to go.
Everyone's whining that Trump may be causing war crimes by blowing up bridges. Them closing the Strait of Hormuz is against international law for freedom of navigation, which is another problem that we have with the 9-dash line with China. Hello? People don't, there are a lot of stupid people out there that haven't been paying attention to this and what's happening. And if you've been listening to me, you can make money on what's happening right now.
When those negotiations with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, our Middle East envoy, failed because they thought it was their inalienable right to have nuclear weapons. Okay, now, this is not our first rodeo with taking enriched uranium. We did the same thing to Libya. So this would not be unprecedented. And I do believe that if they agree to those two major points, I believe everything else can be worked out. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's about right. What happened in Libya is that Bush 43 told Gaddafi, you know, we want you to dismantle your nuclear program. And he convinced Gaddafi to let America go in and take the centrifuges out, remove the uranium in Libya. That's the model I want here. We know they have about 900 pounds of 60% enriched uranium. That's a big dirty bomb. That's enough to make 8 or 10 nuclear bombs if you get to 90%. There is no commercial purpose for 60% enriched uranium. We need to get our hands on that. They need to give it to us, or we need to take it. That's the Strait of Hormuz. When this is over, if they have the ability to control the straits in the future, I think the world will have failed, and I don't think Trump's going to let that happen.
Now, there's a rumor.
Again,
I don't know. It may be just a rumor, and it hasn't been proven out. But there's a rumor that why was there so many individuals tied into the rescue mission for the weapons specialist of the F-15E rescue? All right. A lot of people were thinking, you know what, those C-130s and the number of troops that were there, maybe we already had special forces in that were working to take the uranium, and that we already have ground forces there. They're special forces, all right, and they're working the scene, all right. Or we've inserted people. We think, you know, we're telling everybody, oh, there were hundreds of, you know, that were involved in this operation. Well, maybe they were already there before the actual downing of the F-15 for an operation against the nuclear facilities, or to try to retrieve the nuclear facilities, or start to stage for that. Or maybe what it is that they came in under the banner of we're going to save the weapons specialist, and we kept some of our special forces there to start to move in. And we've already started the ground invasion. Makes you wonder. Makes you wonder.
Control the straits in the future has got to be off the table. The idea that they can come back as the largest state sponsor of terrorism has to be off the table. But they can never have a nuke, they can never make missiles to threaten us in the region, has to be off the table. I prefer diplomacy, but if they don't do that, how many times do you have to be told by Trump, I'm going to do something to you, and he actually does it before you believe it? So this is a defining moment in the history of the Mideast. This is a defining moment for the president. We can't slip this again. Now, the fourth and fifth string, you're not on the team unless you're a nut job. I don't care what string you're playing on. You're not in a leadership role in Iran unless you buy into the radical ideology. Don't be fooled about who the hell you're dealing with here. You're dealing with people that would use a nuclear weapon if they could get it, and they were trying to get it. They've been cheating for years, and God bless Donald Trump for stopping them from having a breakout so they could build 8 or 10 nuclear bombs, and one day they would have used them. So,
ultra liberals and the America First pacifists would have allowed for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And our optionality in the region would radically diminish. And it would be an existential threat to us, not to them. And the chances of us using tactical nukes to fight it would have radically increased. Still America First pacifist? America First pacifists never win.
President Trump, God bless that big fury, but this is a defining moment. This time tomorrow night, we're going to have one of two scenarios: capitulation of their desire to reign terror on the world through diplomacy, or we're going to have a massive military attack destroying this regime's capability to ever wage war again.
Hell yeah.
Senator Lindsey Graham, thank you.
That's the way it should be.
Here.
It's about time. It's about time. 47 fucking years. And now payback for what they did to our hostages. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. What this will do is help to boost up your metabolism. It'll rev up your energy levels, have a steady burn of energy. You'll notice that within 72 hours of taking this. It's a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day. You'll have more vitality. You'll actually want to do more. You'll feel energetic. And that just happens in 72 hours. But if you're taking this regularly, every day, throughout a year, you're going to notice measurable improvements in slowing down the aging process. Your memory will improve. You'll get rid of that brain fog. Your sleep will improve. You'll improve your musculature. Your cardiovascular health will improve. Immune system and endocrine system will improve. You'll bring down inflammation. You're soaking up free radicals. It's a great supplement to take to slow down the aging process and to get healthy. And it stacks really well with a lot of the other supplements that I have, especially C60, the turmeric, the ashwagandha, the lignans, the Max 35. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. And also get vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is super important. Why? Because it's a gene expression cofactor, so your cells perform properly. It also helps to build denser bone because it helps to absorb calcium. Vitamin D3 works better when you take magnesium. So go to my store and get the magnesium. And vitamin D3 gets rid of cells that are infected. It forces them to go into apoptosis. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin D3. And vitamin D3 helps with your cardiovascular health. And indirectly, by having better blood flow to your brain is better. So vitamin D3 helps with your brain function indirectly because it's helping your cardiovascular health. If you have poor perfusion into the brain because of clogged carotid arteries, guess what? You'll lose your brain function and your hippocampus will start to shrink. You don't want that. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right. Let's take a look at some of the more crazy stuff that's happening in the world. Oh, let's play Mad Cow on MS Now and how bad Trump is. Yeah, let's listen to the ultra liberal where they want to keep Iran moving towards a nuclear weapon because Mad Cow knows better.
To the military,
Yeah, what a G.
and now we're into the wartime part of it, right?
Yeah, right.
Because the president has been doing things like that to the whole of the U.S. government. You think he's doing a lot better when it comes to the military while we're at war? After Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, still sounds crazy to say it, after Trump and Hegseth crowed for days and days that the United States had, quote, complete control of Iranian skies and, quote, uncontested airspace over Iran. After Trump said, quote, their air force is gone, their anti-aircraft equipment is gone, we're flying wherever we want, we have nobody even shooting at us. Now, of course, we've had Iran shoot down an F-15 fighter. In the resulting rescue mission, an A-10 Warthog was also shot down. 2 C-130s and some number.
Hello, Mad Cow. Hello, Mad Cow. War is risky. Back to Mad Cow.
4 U.S. Special Operations MH-6 helicopters also destroyed in that rescue mission. That's on top of the $300 million AWACS plane the Iranians blew up while it sat out in the open, undefended, on an airbase in Saudi Arabia in easy reach of Iran's missiles. Also the 3 U.S. F-15s that were shot down right at the start of the war by our allies in Kuwait, because apparently these guys forgot to do basic deconfliction with our allies. To tell them not to shoot down.
So Mad Cow is going to tell you how to wage a war. An ultra-liberal lesbian.
Shot down 3 of them. Dozens of American troops have been wounded and some killed thanks to Iranian missile and drone attacks.
There's some breaking news with Wall Street Journal saying Iran cuts off direct diplomacy with U.S.
Foundations of the regime have been so deeply shaken that eventually it will fall.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting, Ambassador Warren, right now that Iran has cut off direct communication with the U.S. over this threat this morning to destroy Iran's whole civilization. So apparently talks with ceasefire mediators continue. I wonder what you think the odds are of getting some sort of deal before 8 p.m.
Not great. Not great. The question is, will we get a deal after large-scale bombing raids have been conducted against the energy sources, the energy infrastructure of Iran? Will the regime have to sip from the poison chalice, if you remember that term, the term that the Ayatollah gave to end the Iraq-Iran war back in the 1980s?
Local tax experts are here.
We know the regime is capable of sipping from that poison chalice. The question is, what can bring them to raise that cup? And that's the hope that this will make a fundamental change in Iranian thinking. And keep in mind, an Iranian regime that doesn't have a nuclear program, that doesn't have a ballistic missile program, doesn't support terror, doesn't have that arsenal, that stockpile of highly enriched uranium, and doesn't close the Straits of Iran, is a very different Iran. It still could be a hateful regime, and a regime that is corrupt and hated by its
Why is it that the ultra-liberal hates Trump so much that they will spend an ungodly amount of energy and time to try to have Trump unsuccessful in Iran? All right, we're going to go to Times News. I think they're interviewing Omnipore, but it could be just a lookalike. But the point here is that they're trying to spin it that Trump's out of control or he's not getting the right information. What is wrong with destroying Iran's theocratic regime in IRGC and its military capability? What's wrong with wanting to have self-governance by the seculars within Iran? What's wrong with that? Why is the ultra-liberal aligned with the theocratic regime?
He's talking about a lot of this in terms of Jesus Christ, in terms of God, in terms of those kind of things, that we're winning.
Heaven forbid the ultra-liberal has God, country, and family in their ethos. We are seeing not just the death of the theocratic regime of Iran, we're seeing the death of postmodernism.
About us. We're winning, he said. Also, we understand that Trump has been advised that if he goes against civilian infrastructure, that would not necessarily be a war crime. And guess who's one of the advisors? That would be Secretary Hegseth, who has a known experience of lobbying Trump in his first term to release 2 U.S. service members who were accused, convicted, and sentenced of war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq. And sure enough, they were released. So Hegseth has only a glancing acquaintance with war crimes.
Donald Trump's deadline on Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz expires tonight. at 1 a.m. UK time. If Iran fails to comply, then Trump has warned that the US will destroy every bridge and power plant in the country.
But we're doing unbelievably well, well at a level that nobody's ever seen before. The entire country could be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night.
Well, the United Nations Security Council is due to hold a vote on blocking the strait this afternoon. The UK will also convene a meeting with military planners on the issue later today. Joining us now is Christiane Amanpour, CNN's chief international anchor. Christiane, good morning.
Good morning to you, Hugo.
Thanks for being with us as always. Look, you speak to a lot of experts, a lot of government insiders and so on. Is there any hope around that negotiators are going to reach a breakthrough before tonight?
Well, it's hard to see at this point. Certainly there have not been, as far as anybody knows, any direct negotiations anyway. And this competing 15-point plan from the US and 10-point plan response from the Iranians doesn't seem to be bridging the gap. The Iranians have said that they want to have some kind of negotiation, but it has to be based on an end of hostilities, not some kind of temporary ceasefire. That's because they say that would just give the United States and Israel the time and opportunity to just, recover and perhaps gather forces for a ground invasion and that kind of thing. And they believe, from their perspective, from what I'm hearing from them and in touch with certain elements, that this has to be an end of hostilities. So that is not working for the United States at the moment and not necessary for Israel. And you've heard what President Trump has said about taking out the whole country in 4 hours, basically. And Israel already apparently sending text messages in Farsi, the local language, to tell people to stay away from trains and train stations. So that clearly is directed at civilians. And that then opens the whole can of worms about war crimes, about illegal orders, about the Gazification of Iran, and all of that. So it's a very difficult moment right now. It's clearly a turning point moment.
Well, as ever with Trump, the difficulty is understanding what, if anything, he is being entirely serious and sincere about. He has extended deadlines before. There is this whole, Trump always chickens out idea. It is hard to believe, I think, that he really would devastate Iran's civilian infrastructure. And yet, at the same time, nothing is hard to believe with Donald Trump. If this deadline does pass, what do you foresee happening?
Well, if the worst happens, and when I say worst, I do believe that it would be the worst to attempt to just destroy, essentially what he's saying, an entire nation, because that goes so far beyond any military goals and so far beyond what the Iranian people have been hoping for. Of course, they want to be saved, liberated, all the words that Iran and Israel have been saying, and many from inside Iran as well. But the further this war goes and the more it targets their own infrastructure, whether it's schools, whether it's hospitals, whether it's electricity, power plants and the like, the more they get scared. If you read the accounts coming out of Iran over the last 24 hours and listen as much as they can when they reach, it's about packing survival kits, it's about trying to get generators, it's about taping up windows, it's about trying to flee if they can. But there's who knows where they're going to be able to get to. So I think that the expectation that this war was going to somehow liberate the people is wearing thin on an ever-increasing number of people there who see themselves as being attacked. And beyond that, it's hard to see how there's a military solution to this and what that military solution is. And you're right, President Trump has basically said one thing one day and one thing another day. I believe you can see for yourself that allies are incredibly, incredibly concerned. They don't like this. I would say even the Gulf allies are very, very concerned that if US and Israel starts attacking all Iran's power plants, then Iran would retaliate. And that's what they do not want, a power plant, power generator war. So this is getting into a realm that nobody quite knows what the next action will be or what the reaction will be.
Donald Trump was complaining again yesterday about the lack of support he's had from traditional allies. He said it's not just NATO, it's also South Korea, it's also Japan, it's also Australia. He seems to understand this only in terms of an insult to him. Are there others in Washington, even in the administration, who are genuinely concerned about the damage this is doing to American alliances around the world?
It's a very good question, Hugo, and I don't know, because this is an administration that has, and I think you can see it, it has chosen as its most senior cabinet officials, its secretaries of defense, of state, of the DOJ, wherever you look. These have been chosen purely for a loyalist, some might say sycophantic reason, and not because they were exceptionally talented, exceptionally experienced, and exceptionally good at their
Let's
job.
look back at Trump 1.0. All right? 45. Okay? What happened with his administration? He was surrounded by deep staters that were slow walking his policies and tried to prevent him, tried to Trump-proof the country. That's not what the American public wanted. That's not what our Constitution's all about, to have a bunch of technocrats deciding what should be done and what shouldn't be done. But she's promoting that. She's promoting, you know what? You got to surround Trump with a bunch of deep staters. You have to surround any president with a bunch of deep staters. So we have a technate, that we have a technocracy. We have individuals that are experts making the decisions, not our representatives. That's what she's promoting. Now, fast forward to 47. Trump 2.0. He wises up and says he doesn't want any deep staters. He wants loyalty. He wants to move forward and get the job done. But an ultra-liberal always knows better.
If you just look at what's being reported from the Pentagon podium itself by so-called Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, he's talking about a lot of this in terms of Jesus Christ, in terms of God, in terms of those kind of things, that we're winning. Why is everybody being so negative about us? We're winning, he said. Also, we understand that Trump has been advised that if he goes against civilian infrastructure, that would not necessarily be a war crime. And guess who's one of the advisors? That would be Secretary Hegseth, who has a known experience of lobbying Trump in his first term to release 2 U.S. service members who were accused, convicted, and sentenced of war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq. And sure enough, they were released. So Hegseth has only a glancing acquaintance with war crimes. But beyond the war crimes and legal issue is what happens if you actually destroy a nation? What is the blowback? What is the aftermath? Where does the unintended consequences, and not to mention what happens to a whole population who didn't actually sign up for this, no matter how much they want to see the end of their regime.
And who initially you said you were fighting on behalf of as well. Look, finally, Christian, there are reports this morning that Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khomeini, is unconscious after being wounded in the airstrike that killed his father. I guess it's a reminder that we still understand very little about what's going on in Iran. But I mean, do you get a sense, as I often feel like myself getting the sense that not only are there no meaningful negotiations happening, it's not entirely clear there's anybody with really the control and the power to negotiate with.
Well, look, you just put your finger on an incredibly important point right now. It's one thing for Israel to have the intelligence to target senior leaders, and we know it does. It's done it for years, and it's done it in Iran for years, and certainly at the outbreak of this particular war, it cleared out the whole top level of Iranian policymakers. However, and I don't know whether Mojtaba is conscious or not. We were told that he was very, very gravely injured, and you haven't seen him. So that you can draw whatever conclusion. But in terms of others who might have been, you remember in the beginning, Trump kept saying, well,
we have to worry about the international community because we're going to blow up Iran and it's going to be war crimes and all this crap. And how is the international community going to deal with a destroyed country? Learn history, bitch. We did it in Japan. We did it to Germany. In World War II, there's a reconstruction. They eventually get their shit together and be part of the international community. Hello? This isn't our first rodeo.
These better people to deal with. They keep killing every single level. The latest one was an attempt on the life of the former foreign minister, Kamal Kharazi, who was foreign minister during the reform period of Mohammad Khatami. Just to say, when they think they are trying to negotiate, having killed off practically everybody who they might be able to negotiate with, that leaves an obvious hole.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much.
So
indeed.
what is she promoting? She's promoting deal with the terrorists, deal with the theocratic regime, try to de-escalate so they can reconstitute and have a chance later down the road, maybe in 2 years, maybe 5 years, maybe one generation down the road, have a nuclear weapon or weapons of mass destruction. I'm more worried about biological weapons from Iran than I am nuclear. But the point here is let them reconstitute and rain havoc. That's what she's promoting. That's what a liberal promotes. And that is exactly what America First pacifists promote. Get the job done. It's been 47 fucking years. It's time to get the job done. These liberals are pieces of shit. Every single one of them.
Privilege having you on the show. Christian is, of course, CNN's international anchor. Jack Blackburn is still with me. Jack, I am struck today, as I am so often, about just the language Donald Trump uses. And I know this shouldn't be all about language, but when he is, for the second time in a week, threatening to bomb a country back to the Stone Age, you kind of think it is unimaginable that a past president would have done that. Even during the Vietnam War, it was a general who said,
wait a minute. Hello? The Ayatollah called us the great Satan. He wants to set the whole world on fire. It's part of the Shia religion. You need to fight fire with fire. You have to be aggressive with people that want to kill you. And this is what Nietzsche said with the slave morality. When you have these people that focus too much on empathy, you get taken advantage of. Shit. This is right here. Nietzsche's being proven right here. You don't want to subscribe to the slave morality. You need to get onto the battlefield and fight. Now, we spend, as a taxpayer in the United States, trillions of dollars for our military to have the capability to destroy our enemies. And why the hell are we listening to ultra fucking liberals and America First pacifists preventing us from getting the job done? Right here. They're so intellectual. They're super intellectual. We know better. We want an international order where any conflict is a war crime. They want to box you in so you can't have sovereignty, can't have self-determination. Do you think that the Iranians were really playing fair in the international world? Do you think that they were really a beacon of virtue? What fucking planet are these ultra liberals from Times Radio on? Pluto? I mean, fucking A. And oh, by the way, I think Trump and his vulgarity is right in line with what needs to happen. He's speaking military. He's not speaking in vulgarity. He's just speaking military. He wants to get the fucking job done. But the ultra-liberal, with all of their esoteric knowledge in college, and they know better. Their mentality led to the problems that we have today. 47 years of this festering. And none of their mouths open up today saying, what about the funding of terror from Iran, where they're funding the Houthis, they're funding Hezbollah, they're funding Hamas. It wasn't too long ago in the 80s and in the 90s where you had the PLO blowing up stuff. Now, today, fast forward to 2026, and you have an infiltration in Europe and in the United States with a lot of Islamic sleeper cells. They could be activated. Hell, we could have another 9/11. or 7/7 or whatever date you want to pick. Because we had liberal policies for immigration. Liberals have fucked up this world.
And spend the rest of his life sort of retreating from it. It's just astonishing.
Yeah, they're so intelligent.
So deeply bizarre.
Yeah, so deeply bizarre.
We have sort of got used to it, and it's quite important to
How
not get-
bizarre is it for a president to say, "Time's up, I'm going to kick your ass"? That's so bizarre. We view Washington, George Washington, as a beacon of virtue. But if you actually read the biographies of George Washington, he cursed more than a sailor does. But it's so bizarre. See what I mean? Overeducated dipshits. So smart that they're stupid.
To immunise to it. These statements carry immense weight and do damage in and of themselves. And the press conference he gave in the press room at the White House yesterday.
Next to the rabbits.
No, not next to the rabbit.
Yeah, these liberals, these stupid liberals that know everything. If you've been paying attention to me for the last 2 years on what's been going on, I'm telling you how to make some money. UCO is now trading at 42.65. It's been moving up ever since the U.S. Open from 9:30. Right now it's 11 o'clock. And guess what? The oil futures are now at 116.60. And it's probably going to bounce off of the 119 level. Now, do you want to be a liberal, or do you want to actually, be light the fire of your inner Julius Caesar, light the fire of your inner Machiavelli? Stop being a fucking liberal. Shit. Take charge.
Picture of the rabbit looking forlorn backstage yesterday, but he gave this very long, bizarre, rambling. At one point, it wasn't entirely clear what he was saying, but he seemed to take credit for killing Osama bin Laden. And I don't know how anybody in the inner apparatus of the American state can be looking at this and thinking, this is the way to run things. No matter what you think of policy direction, this is a bizarre way to conduct yourselves.
He is the perfect guy to get the job done. And we've had so many presidents, including Trump 1.0, that were too afraid to get the job done. Now it's time. Now it's time. You know what? Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised that America wins. Don't be surprised that postmodernism dies, which it needs to. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the peppermint structural nano silver soap. And you can also get it in lemongrass. These are the 2 soaps that I have in stock right now. Get a few bars for your household. They're very high quality. They'll help to improve your skin and also to neutralize because it has the structural nano silver. That's super important, especially during the cold season. All right. What I want to do is listen to CNBC talking about this. Iran cuts off direct diplomacy with U.S. This is per the Wall Street Journal.
An official who is close to those talks told our colleagues at MS Now that there is no hope anything will be confirmed today following U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran and Iranian attacks inside Gulf states. It's looking very unlikely, but Pakistan continues to try to push for peace and stability in the region. All of which, guys, leaves it deeply unclear whether a deal remains possible at this point. And it comes, as we know, of at least some increase in escalation overnight.
And if we hit, oil is going to go up. All right? Oil is going to go up, but you got to be very careful. You can make money as oil is going up, but it can go down very quickly. So you have to use some risk management, get in, make the money, get out. All right? But I'm telling you how to benefit from the news. Because guess what? Don't you think the war profiteers are doing the same fucking thing? Don't you think that people that actually get ahead in this world, takes a look at surveying the whole landscape and figures out how you can benefit from it, instead of like going, oh, Trump is a war criminal. What? Don't be stupid. God.
Been told that Vance is just one U.S. official that's leading those negotiations, along with Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner as well, but he is at least close to the region, sort of on standby. It seems like at this point, in case there are any sort of direct in-person negotiations happening. The president was asked yesterday whether Vance would be dispatched for some sort of in-person negotiations. He said he could be in the coming days, was very non-committal there. But Vance earlier today, speaking to reporters in Hungary, sort of suggesting there was still reason for optimism in the talk, saying that the U.S. did, at that point at least, still expect to get some sort of a response from the Iranians before the 8 p.m. deadline tonight. So, as you say, we'll hear more from Vance coming up, and maybe we'll get more details at that point from him.
All right, so the equities right now for the S&P 500 is trading at 6,544. When we start bombing tonight, the futures market is probably going to be testing the 6,450 mark. Don't be fearful, buy. Don't be fearful, buy. All right? I told you how to make money during COVID. I told you how to make money during the tariff issue that we had last year. And I'm telling you how to make money in the equity market now. There's a support level at 6,450 and 6,140. And they're very powerful support levels because those are retracement levels. Don't be fearful. All right?
As the percentage of respondents expecting a worse financial situation gets to its highest level since April of last year. I guess the question will be whether we consider this getting untethered or not, at least on the 1 year.
Well, it's not surprising that you would see it in consumer expectations like surveys, right? People see the gas price, right? They feel it. They see every tick of that price go higher when they fill up their tanks. So it's not surprising that we've seen it in consumer confidence numbers, higher expectations of inflation, in the services number of ISM yesterday, where prices paid, which is basically a business survey, rises, and here surveys as well. And we know that the Fed pays attention to these surveys. You don't see it as much in the market-based inflation expectations measures, like the five-year forward, that sort of thing, outside of just the very near term. So it will continue to be a debate at the Fed of how entrenched these expectations are.
Now oil futures are at 117.25 and UCO is trading at 42.75. Would have made money if you've been paying attention to me for the last 2.5 hours. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg here.
Eric, the Broker Studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. See, I read headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal, and this is according to the New York Times. Iran has stopped negotiations with the U.S. Again, according to the New York Times. We'll have continued reporting on that throughout the morning. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today. We can do that with Bloomberg's Christine Aquino. Christine, what are you looking at today?
All right, Paul, let's take a look at Broadcom because that is represented in green today. So ticker AVGO. And those shares are up 2.5% at the moment. And that is because the chip maker announced a long-term agreement with Google to develop and supply Tensor.
All right, I want to play Paul Krugman, who is a Nobel Prize winning economist that was from the New York Times. But this guy is, I can't stand him. And actually, he writes terribly. I've read one of his books. He actually writes terribly, even though he was a economist and a journalist, commentator, op-ed for economics. All right, let's play this really short clip from him. It's titled, "America as We Knew It May End Tuesday." See, another crazy fucking liberal that's promoting postmodernism, the erosion of God, country, and family. And, oh, we are supposed to live under the Damocles of Iran getting a nuclear weapon? Is that our destiny? I don't think so. Our destiny is exploration. That's the reason why we have 50 stars on our flag. It's about our self-determination and pushing forward to the horizon. Not some ultra-liberal looking down on the earth, not doing nothing, doing absolutely nothing. Ultra-liberals do nothing. All right, let's listen to Paul Krugman.
America, as the Iranians are not engaging seriously with the United States right now. They are engaging seriously.
Hold on. I gotta get to it here. History, so I can get back to it. All right, here we go.
America, as we knew it, may end Tuesday.
Bullshit.
Krugman,
Hi, I'm Paul Krugman. I'm Paul Krugman, and I got a Nobel Prize, and America's gonna end Tuesday. Really? I don't think so. Just look at Polymarket. I'm pretty sure that people would be betting on this one.
Yesterday, I talked about how awful Trump's message about glory to God and all of that was, but it's looking much, much worse today.
You can't say glory to God because that's promoting God, country, and family. No, in a postmodern world, you gotta be anything goes relativism. The erosion of spirituality. Yeah, that's what a liberal does. That's what a liberal is. This guy is, it is impossible to understand why he got a Nobel Prize.
Just think about, I find myself, let me do a helicopter in here and talk about history for a second. Think about what Abraham Lincoln, president who was actually winning his war, said at his second inaugural. And probably all heard the magnificent.
The Civil War was extremely stressful for Lincoln. And many a time throughout the 4 years that the war was conducted, the Union was either slightly winning or slightly losing. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that Lincoln was going to win the war, and he had to get rid of so many generals because they weren't doing the job. Until he finally found Sherman and Grant. And what did Sherman do? He burned down Atlanta to force the capitulation of the South. War is hell, but you have to win. So let's listen to the Nobel Prize winning dipshit telling us on what happened during the Civil War. Shit. I have an ancestor that fought in the Civil War. He was at Appomattox. He saw General Lee surrender. Let's listen to the great guy of economics. This guy's a dipshit.
Conclusion, which begins with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in. Determination, humility, decency. Now
he also gave the go-ahead for Sherman to burn down Atlanta. Don't forget that.
Trump's Truth Social post from this morning.
This guy's a dipshit.
Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah.
And so Trump is getting his inner Sherman. He's channeling his inner Sherman. Gerald Sherman. He got the job done.
What happened to us? This is not the country we were supposed to be. If Trump is actually going to give the order for massive war crimes, for destruction of civilian infrastructure, power plant, bridge, which will, among other things, lead to a lot of deaths in Iran. Will the military obey it? A year ago, I would have said no. But what we do know now is that, first of all, there turns out to be at least a significant MAGA component inside the officer corps. And we know that Pete Hegseth has been systematically corrupting, dismantling the military over the past 14 months. That generals who raise ethical concerns have been fired. Officers who even just want to be intelligent about warfare and not believe that it's all about warrior ethos and lethality have been fired. That it's quite possible that there's a component of there's a quorum of officers who will follow instructions to commit war crimes.
Amazing. Just first of all, he's a dipshit. He's a dipshit, but he's one of these ultra liberals. He wants to push socialism. I still don't understand why he ended up getting a Nobel Prize in economics. And he's another one of these liberal Jews that don't observe Alrighty. Let's listen in to Fox News here.
Senior U.S. official with me in a conversation earlier today said the following: "We are absolutely in touch with Iran, absolutely. The talks have been positive. If we get lucky, we will have something by the end of the day, suggesting 8 o'clock later tonight." So on the clock, wherever you are in the time zone right now, that's 11 hours from now. I think it's important for two things, Dana. When you look at what the vice president said in Hungary last hour, he talked about the military objectives of Iran are being completed now, which I think might surprise a lot of people, but still feels confident that it can get a response by 8 o'clock tonight. Now, what the president said yesterday when he was in the briefing room, he said the Iranians came back with a 10-point plan, but it did not meet the satisfaction about the nuclear program or the Strait of Hormuz. But he still said it's a significant proposal, significant step. It's not good enough, but it's a very significant step. So whether or not there is some hints in all of this, we'll see throughout the course.
Yeah, so we'll take you through all of it. We are 11 hours away from the president's ultimatum to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and come to a deal or else face obliteration. American forces are keeping up the pressure, bombing dozens of military targets on Kars Island overnight, and that's according to a U.S. official.
So we also got this from the last hour on Truth Social moments ago. Here we go now, and it's a long one. "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran."
So let's get going. Trey Gaines reports from Tel Aviv. Dan Hoffman with analysis on where this could all be heading. But first, a busy day at the White House, and that's where we find Alexandria Haas. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Dana. Well, there have been very few presidential warnings in history. As sobering as the first 6 words of that Truth Social post, a whole civilization will die today. And sobering is the point of this. President Trump saying he is not pushing back this 8 p.m. deadline as he had pushed back deadlines before, that Iran has had more than enough time to come to their senses, to come to a deal and open up the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking from the briefing room podium yesterday, the president said that he still has interest and optimism in coming to a diplomatic resolution.
I can tell you they're negotiating, we think, in good faith. We're going to find out. We're getting the help of some incredible countries that want this to be ended because it affects them also. A lot of people are affected by this. But we're giving them till tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern.
So 8 Eastern, that is 3:30 a.m. Tehran time. The president does not want them to sleep on that deadline. And following through with this threat of decimation to Iranian power plants, that is what is promised here. It's something the president said that he will do if necessary, but doesn't want to, especially if the U.S. has to extend a hand in eventually helping Iran rebuild.
I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to. We don't want that to happen. We may even get involved with helping them rebuild their nation. And you know what? If that's the case, the last thing we want to do is start with power plants, which are among the most expensive things.
Now, the president yesterday dismissing any criticism that targeting civilian infrastructure would amount to a war crime. He says, given the stakes at hand, that just would not apply. Meanwhile, Iranian officials via state TV are urging young people, civilians in their country, to create these human chains and human shields around power plants. But, you know, with that Truth Social post, I think there's a psychological element to that. The president's trying to speak directly to those who are potentially in Iranian emerging leadership, who he has called reasonable, telling them to take this moment, utilize it, and prove that to be the case of them being reasonable.
All right, Alex, thank you.
So we want to get to Trey Yingst now, the latest in Tel Aviv. And Trey, good afternoon to you. What more do you have at this hour? Hello.
Yeah, Bill, good morning. Anticipation is growing across the region ahead of that 8 p.m. Eastern time deadline tonight and that post by President Trump on Truth Social, where he said, in part, we will find out tonight one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. It comes as Fox News can confirm that dozens of U.S. strikes targeted Iran's Kard Island overnight. Fox's Jennifer Griffin says the targets included bunkers, radar stations, and ammunition storage. Landing docks, though, Jennifer says, were intentionally not targeted, according to a senior U.S. official. As this is taking place, the talk of diplomacy continues, and there are many people, including the Israelis and Gulf countries, waiting to see what will happen in the hours ahead. President Trump saying yesterday from the James Brady briefing room, what will happen if diplomacy doesn't prevail?
We have a plan.
Pace University gets people where they want to go. Through immersive academics, real-world experiences, a custom.
We have a plan because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to. We don't want that to happen.
President Trump telling Fox News over the weekend that Iran isn't even negotiating anymore about their nuclear program. The president said, quote, the big thing is they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They're not even negotiating that point. It's so easy. That's already been conceded. Most of the points are conceded. Now, with the talk of diplomacy, we're also learning more about that daring rescue operation to save a U.S. airman over the weekend. High-level U.S. sources told Fox News that while the airman rescue was going on, the U.S. Central Command Commander, Admiral Brad Cooper, directed a strike on an IRGC headquarters in an underground facility near the Iranian capital of Tehran. I'm told the strike was done with B-2 bombers that flew from the United States using bunker buster bombs, the same weapons used in Operation Midnight Hammer. The source telling Fox News the headquarters was obliterated. And so clearly the United States and Israel keeping up the pressure on the Islamic Republic. And we know today the Israelis bombed many of the rail bridges across Iran after warning civilians there to stay away from the trains. Bill, Dana?
Remarkable stuff, Trey. Thanks. Trey Yingst watching every headline from the Middle East for us. Thank you. We're going to bring in Dan Hoffman out for analysis. Former CIA chief of station, Fox News contributor. Dan, on the deadline, go ahead and size it up. What's the pro? What's the con? How do you see it?
Well, I think there's three ways this could play out, Bill. One is that we do nothing. I certainly don't see that happening. The second option is that we either have a deal or significant progress towards a deal. And the third option is that we don't get any of that progress and the president decides to start launching these strikes. This is a clear statement from the president warning Iran that we would take action like this, and U.S. credibility is at stake. So I have no doubt that we've got our bombers warmed up in the bullpen ready to take action if Iran doesn't proceed to negotiate in good faith. These things are never decided, it appears, at least with Iran, until the last minute.
Well, and who knows how they're even talking amongst each other and who's in charge at this point. Can you speak to the Karg Island strikes, the military strikes on that? What psychologically does that do to the Iranians who are trying to make a decision today?
I think those strikes were designed to push Iran in the right direction and let them know that we're serious about launching strikes tonight. If Iran doesn't meet the 8 p.m. deadline, we have the capability and we have clearly the willpower to launch serious strikes on Iran. And I think that's what was behind some of these strikes. It's worth noting that Israel has been striking Iran's critical infrastructure, petrochemical industry, and their steel industry as well, all along, as well as key leadership targets, as you noted.
Dan, it's hard for me to see what's on the other side of this deadline if the attacks of obliteration are carried on behalf of the Israelis and the American military. We'll put that on the back burner for now and see whether or not that happens. I thought what the president said yesterday was something that was new information, that a man-pad brought down that F-15E Eagle. And the reason that's important, that's a shoulder-fired rocket-propelled grenade, essentially. It's a heat seeker, and it goes after the engine of a plane. Now, you well know that the CIA developed the Stinger for the Afghan rebels to bring down Soviet helicopters through an 8-year war in Afghanistan and turn the tide against the Soviet Union. I believe this is the first time we've been given an indication that the Iranians have this capacity. What does that mean for our Air Force flying in that theater?
Yeah, so listen, I think yesterday's press conference where we saw Director of CIA John Ratcliffe standing beside President Trump was really a window into the extraordinary cooperation we see from the intelligence community, informing the president and other key policymakers so they can make the best decisions. And of course, we saw that with the rescue of our airmen. And then post facto on that strike against the F-15, where did that man-pad come from? The extent to which China or Russia is not just providing Iran with financial assistance, but arming them as well, and giving them the intelligence Iran needs to strike our military assets. These are all things that the intelligence community, I think, is very much focused on.
In fact, Ratcliffe spoke about the Iranians and how they felt after we rescued our airmen. This was yesterday at the White House.
Reason, in addition to the human and technical assets deployed by the president to find our airmen, CIA executed a deception campaign to confuse the Iranians who were desperately hunting for our airmen. Our intelligence reflects that the Iranians were embarrassed and ultimately humiliated by the success of this audacious rescue mission.
So, Dan, as you prepare to go through the day, what will you be looking to? What would be a tell for you about whether this deadline is going to be met or not?
I think there's just a lot happening behind the scenes, Dana, and I wouldn't be surprised if even the CIA is reaching out clandestinely to their contacts inside Iran and in the region. We honestly may not see much. We might see more military strikes from the United States or from Israel today, of course, and maybe more on Karg Island, designed to demonstrate to Iran that we're serious about this deadline. But we may not see much definitive evidence of where we're headed until close to 8 p.m.
All right, right now, a little bit before 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they're in Tehran. The sun sets locally at 6:30. We'll watch it.
All right, we're going to listen to Cash Jordan. We're going to listen to Cash Jordan about New York City. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. This will help you to recover after a workout. This will help to boost up your immune system and your endocrine system, help with you if you have inflammation at the joint level. It'll also help with your cardiovascular health and brain function. Bringing down inflammation at the brain level will help to protect your neurons. This is a very important supplement to take. It's a month's supply to help all these different organ systems. And therefore, you're going to slow down the aging process. You can stack this with Boomer Boost to help to control the A1C levels. You can also stack it with the other supplements that I have, such as C60 and the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, the Max 35, the omega-3, depending on what you want to target. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Also, because we are in the allergy season now, you need to get the structural nanosilver lozenges and drops. You can get it in Manuka honey. You can also get it in orange splash. And for the lozenges, or for the drops, you can get it in blueberry, cherry flavor, and also honey and lemon. This will help to neutralize and protect your oral pharynx and maintain the health of your epithelial cells. That's super important. So if you want to help to boost up your immune system and help to neutralize during the cold season and the allergy season, make sure you get the structural nanosilver drops and lozenges. The other lozenges out there that are not structural nanosilver are not as good. Structural nanosilver neutralizes. Super important here. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges and the drops. All right, Cash Jordan.
Part of the country is going to go completely Marxist communist. That's why the New York Stock Exchange is moving to Dallas, Texas. Everything in the financial world, which I consult to, we're moving everything down to Texas and Florida. We're done with New York.
So, you heard it right there. New York City is losing the people who've had enough of the new mayor's plans to totally transform this place. While he taxes them and anyone who earns a paycheck or owns a home to pay for that transformation. But while socialist proponents say it's only month 4 of the Mamdani administration and we've got to give them time to get going to see how well socialism works, those fleeing this revolution will be long gone by the time that happens.
A warning shot for New York City's new socialist mayor. Multiple credit agencies, including Fitch and Moody's, all sounding the alarm on Mamdani's $127 billion budget.
Raise the taxes on the wealthy. We're paying their taxes. I understand that. Of course they're going to move out.
I think the first thing is to come back to the facts. You know, when I was in the state assembly, we were told that millionaires were going to flee. That was in 2021. And what we found is that now we have more millionaires than we did back at that point.
Even if they tax the rich, it will basically force people that have many means to move out of New York. And if they move out of New York, then in essence, we will lose their property taxes, we will lose their income taxes, we will lose their sales tax. They will leave and close their businesses. They will move their businesses out of state. Thousands of people will lose their jobs.
You're saying if we don't tax the rich, then I got to increase property tax. We are not a part of South Queen. We are not part of your negotiating tactics.
So if you're gonna tax the rich and you're serious about it, you better do it now while they're still around. And what nobody's talking about is the reason New York is going full speed into left field on communism is because nobody running this place thinks the rich are going anywhere. Even though wealth has been packing its bags and getting on buses to Florida and Texas for years, due to a deteriorating quality of life here in New York that extends all the way from our dystopian worst in the nation subway system to crime sprees taking over public shopping centers in the middle of the afternoon. But strap yourself in because the people running New York are of the mindset that the more taxes we have, the more good we can do for the greatest number of people. Besides, if you're a property owner or if you've accumulated anything of note, that's not fair. But business leaders are sounding the alarm with insiders revealing firms are quietly doing everything they can to redistribute their operations elsewhere. And even the governor of New York's figured this out, hitting the panic button and telling people the state has to be competitive if it doesn't want people to leave before the communist poverty machine succeeds in punishing wealth and achievement wherever it finds it. But that brings us to the real reason this is happening. You don't just have politicians in New York who believe in taking people's money and doing something else with it. No, you've got a voter base here that believes Other people's money is their path to success. They think it's their best option. And as horrified as most of America is that an avowed socialist is now running the capital of capitalism, you can't blame Mr. Mamdani for running on the platform he promised everyone and being true to his word. Instead, you've got to recognize the fundamental problem that begins once a critical mass of people realize they can vote for your money to wind up in their pocket. The only problem is, whose pocket exactly is that money going to come from if everyone leaves?
What's going to happen is this part of the country is going to go completely Marxist communist. That's why the New York Stock Exchange is moving to Dallas, Texas. Everything in the financial world, which I consult to, we're moving everything down to Texas and Florida. We're done with New York.
So here we have someone in finance who's telling us that there is a migration taking place from cities like New York to places like Texas and Florida. And even though this is happening, and even though the stock exchange really is leaving, the socialists running New York don't believe this. They think it's all fake news. And wait till you hear what they think the secret to prosperity is.
I think the first thing is to come back to the facts. You know, when I was in the state assembly, we were advocating to raise personal income taxes and corporate taxes at the time to meet the needs of working class New Yorkers. We were told that millionaires were going to flee.
Mayor Mamdani, the mayor of New York, is Napoleon the pig from Animal Farm. Literally. He's a communist.
2021. We raised about $4 billion in additional revenue that year. And what we found is that now we have more millionaires than we did back at that point.
So there you have it. The mayor thinks taxing millionaires is a non-issue. In fact, if you look at this statement, what he's actually saying is the more you tax millionaires, the more of them you create. So if you want to create prosperity, just jack up the taxes. That's how you do it. And if someone's successful, the harder you punish them, the more successful people you're going to have. That's right, forget what you learned in economics, because these ideas all disregard the fact that New York has more millionaires today in spite of how rough it is on them. Remember, the stock market creates millionaires, gives people the wealth to buy homes in middle-class areas of the city. Plus, there have been many economic innovations like artificial intelligence and businesses that create jobs and pay people lots of money, do it in spite of the government's attempts to stop that from happening. And although the mayor's right, there was no mass exodus back in 2021, New York City also wasn't run by someone who promised socialism. Do you ever get the feeling that your digital life isn't really yours? That your emails, photos, files are being scanned, analyzed, or just living on someone else's server? What?
Hedge funds, they're in Palm Beach.
So when businesses relocate and they stop hiring, the future people that you're going to punish in order to get their money, they're never going to be here because they weren't here. And that reveals the big problem with socialism. You can set it up and you can start stealing from people today. Oh, yes, you can rob those middle-class homeowners with higher property taxes. And yes, they
And
won't
this
be
is
able to leave.
exactly what Bitchute was complaining about with the slavery morality. This is exactly what Plato was saying, where if you have a true democracy, not a constitutional republic, but it's just the will of the people, you will eventually move towards socialism. See, people don't realize that the Enlightenment, which is the bedrock of our constitutional republic, is about property rights. Life, liberty, and property. That's the Enlightenment under John Locke. And guess what? Mayor Mamdani is not in line with the Enlightenment. He's more in line with the Caliphate, actually, and communism. He's aligned with Marxism. And Marxism was about atheism. So that means that Mamdani wants to destroy God, country, and family. And what's crazy is there were so many liberals, young and older, that voted for this schmuck.
trapped in their homes, but there are other people who you'll never get the chance to steal from because they aren't coming. And if you get a short-term boost from stealing from your own voters, it's only a matter of time before the money you've got evaporates and then there's nothing left to take, and then the entire city you're running collapses.
We've left. I'm the 1%. Okay, I'm the 85,000 people that pay all the taxes in New York because our income exceeds $1 million. Well, I left. I moved my businesses and my residence to Florida, so Mandami can't steal from me.
So here's what you've got to realize. If the jobs don't come here and future millionaires never show up, what do the city's job prospects look like? This is frightening once you dig into it. Recent New York City job growth has been concentrated in low and moderate wage industries, which means long-term economic growth predictions are dire because job quality is going to suffer. And the numbers speak for themselves. In 2025, only 33,000 new private sector jobs were created. And in the first half of 2025, 4,600 fewer businesses existed than the year before, but it gets even worse because if you remove job growth in healthcare, the city's job growth last year was actually negative, and there's a problem with this because those healthcare and social assistance jobs, apparently they pay extremely low wages, which is just going to lead to more of the affordability crisis. Everyone here is affected by it.
A lot of physicians are leaving New York. A lot. Now, a big part of it is because private equity companies are buying the clinics and they are forcing physicians to see more patients in a shorter amount of time. So an average physician now, general physician, is seeing a patient about 7.5 minutes. It used to be 11. And before that, it was around 18 to 22 minutes. And because of the squeeze, the physicians are really hourly wage earners, then they're leaving the city. So individuals that may have had a doctor for 5-6 years, they have to switch doctors because the doctor left. And so there is a turnover of doctors now in New York because the cost of living is too high. You have the private equity companies coming in and buying the clinic. New York's dying. New York's dying. And it's because of ultra liberals.
Every single day.
A warning shot for New York City's new socialist mayor. Multiple credit agencies, including Fitch and Moody's, all sounding the alarm on Mamdani's $127 billion budget.
It's a big budget.
Not quite yet, but a very clear warning. Keep going down this road, and it's coming. His budget calls for raiding the city's rainy day fund and other savings over the next 2 years to pay for billions in new spending. So, Taylor, do you know about the bond aspect of this?
So capitalism is doing what it can to explain to socialism where this is going to lead, but nobody here seems to care because communists don't believe in things like stock markets, home ownership, passing down wealth to your children, earning more money than somebody else. Oh no, all of these things are cardinal sins.
The reason why Marxism doesn't work is because he believes, the theory believes, that a wage earner that produces a product, the wage earner deserves 100% of the value of the product that they make. Well, what would be the incentive to actually build a plant? There's no profit. If 100% of the value of the good is the ownership of the worker, it makes zero sense. Where's the incentive? Marxism destroys the incentive for a society to move forward. Now, laissez-faire capitalism is also bad, but Marxism is worse. Now, that's the reason why we have regulations. That's the reason why that there is negotiations with labor unions. This is the reason why there are some understanding between the workforce and the capitalists to come to an agreement, to invest in a company, to create a product, and to sell it. And not every business is going to make money. Sometimes the business may make a lot of money one year and lose money the next. Marxism doesn't work because they believe that the excess value of a product, once the worker makes it, is the ownership of the worker and the society. It's not even the ownership of the worker, it's the ownership of the society. Meanwhile, the gurus in communism, with their planned economy, are sitting high on the hog. They're living high on the hog, having filet mignon, while everyone else is in a breadline. Does that seem fair? What brings people out of poverty? Education and entrepreneurship. Does that sound like Marxism? No.
That if somebody's doing well, they should be punished, because that's how you create more people who are doing well. You see, you steal from those who are doing well, and now everybody's doing well. That's the philosophy behind this. Of course, it doesn't work. Of course, it always runs out of money. And when it runs out of money, instead of saying, hey, gee, we've got the wrong system here. No, they don't say that. Instead, they say, oh, we didn't have enough communism.
In a big city like New York. So,
after a career working for major energy companies, I decided to look into coal. And I realized there was a better way that we've been overlooking for 100 years.
Based upon just insight.
Communism.
In a big city like New York.
So it's a never-ending cycle, right? Because if your bond if you get a downgrade, the bond rating goes down, then in theory, the cost of borrowing goes up. Because I'm looking at you, and instead of having an 800 credit score, you now have a 7 or a 6 or a 500 credit score. So I'm going to say, you know what? I'm not going to lend you money at 2 or 3%. I'll lend you money, but you have to pay me 4 or 5 or 6% interest. Because I'm not confident that you're going to pay me back in full. Effectively, that's sort of what's happening here, is they're thinking about doing a downgrade. And this is now the third in 10 days. I mean, this is shocking. So
here's the thing. If this happens, it's going to add hundreds of millions of dollars a year to the city's budget, which is already bloated and which it already can't afford in interest payments on the money it has to borrow to fund itself. And when that happens, what are the communists going to say? They're going to say, well, we should have raised taxes more. Then we wouldn't have had to borrow so much because we could steal it instead.
You know that she's on board with what he's doing, but she also knows if she's too on board with it, she won't get reelected.
And I think this is the first sign we're getting that Mamdani knows what he's doing is not going to work either. Right. I mean, this is the simplest thing to convey even to a kindergartner. Take a bucket of water, fill it up with water, and then start drilling holes in the bottom of it and see if you keep drilling more holes, you can pour more water and keep it. What happens, right? It's just the tax base erodes. You have the top 1% in New York paying over half the taxes here. You cannot move in this direction. You've seen it happen before. Maryland, California is now accelerating the exodus of wealth. Washington, New York is going to be the same thing if these two don't get on the same page about not taxing and soaking the rich.
Dagan, what do you think? Was it a scheduling snap?
So look, if you're going to do this, if you're going to drill holes in the bucket, so to speak, you're going to lose every single thing that you need to pay for all the stuff that you want. And even if New York has more millionaires today than it may have had yesterday, tomorrow's a completely different story once you go full communist. How does job growth concentrating in care work, which is the new only growing sector that we have for jobs, affect New York City's finance? If these jobs aren't very good, it means right here, less income for residents means less revenue from income taxes collected from the city's residents, as well as less disposable income, which is spent on businesses, which means less tax revenue. So if we're going to trade jobs of one type for jobs of another type, and we're going to lose all the money that comes with those jobs, well, there's going to be an affordability nightmare, but it gets even worse. Not only are the industries where job growth...
Before we find out how it gets worse, please help support capitalism by going to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And if you get the supplements that I'm telling you to get and use daily, you're going to actually slow down the aging process and be healthy. So you don't need Standard healthcare. Lignans. It'll soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation. Help with your immune system and your endocrine system, help with your cardiovascular system and brain function. Get the lignans. You want to bring down inflammation. It's super important as a major vector to slow down the aging process. Another great way to slow down the aging process is to control your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels. Ashwagandha root will do that. Ashwagandha root will help to lower the cortisol levels. Also, ashwagandha root will allow you to control your blood glucose levels. When that happens, you're going to bring down less inflammation at the vascular level. You're going to deposit less plaque, and you're going to get better blood flow. And by bringing down cortisol levels that are chronically elevated, you're allowing your body to heal your organ systems, and your immune system will go up. Stack these together for max benefit, and you do this regularly, you're going to slow down the aging process. And all these different organ systems are going to be performing better. Immune system, cardiovascular system, brain function. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the lignans, and get the ashwagandha root. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Capitalism.
New York is concentrated, the ones providing fewer benefits. A large portion of those jobs also provided income below the poverty line, which means everybody who comes here and gets a job, even if we have job growth, because these are not jobs that allow people to afford life here, these are individuals that are going to need assistance. So job growth numbers in New York are still going to be a bad thing for the city because they aren't the types of jobs that used to grow here. Jobs, accounting, finance, tech sectors, those jobs are shipping out. These are the new jobs shipping in. And if everybody who comes here and gets a job still needs government assistance to pay their rent, to buy their food, they're going to need the free grocery stores, we're going to need to expand housing vouchers. It's going to create a sort of doom loop that the city can never get out of while it continues to hammer the people who can't flee fast enough.
Including cities. And for a city to compete, of course, it's quality of life, it's your subways, it's your hospitals, but it's also individual taxes, estate taxes, corporate taxes, and it drives people out. So all you have to do is look at California, New York versus Florida, and there's a huge exodus taking place. It's not good for the city, and people just make a mistake of just taxing people, but that's the outcome. And very often people think they're being moral by doing that, but they're not. What they're doing is they're hurting your own city, and unfortunately, people vote with their feet, and so.
What do people say? What do you say to people like Bernie Sanders, who says it every day, 20 times a day? Billionaires and millionaires don't pay their fair share.
I don't know what he means by fair share.
Okay, here's why. He's not being condescending. It's because it's arbitrary. What's fair today, after you steal it and realize it's not enough, becomes unfair, and now you need more. That's how taxing people to pay their fair share works. The fair share number is not set in stone. It's always moving. It's always growing. And whatever people pay, it's not enough because communism always runs out of other people's money. So it's never fair for someone to have more than somebody else. And that's how New York City is being run. The electorate here has been radicalized to believe that the only way they're going to get ahead is if they have what somebody else has. And in a city with low-wage job growth and terrible housing prospects with some of the highest rents in the country, voting for rules or policies that would help somebody get ahead here while making the lives of New Yorkers better are not on the table at all. Voting for laws that would allow more housing to be built in New York City quickly, that would enrich people. You see, that would mean that somebody could come in here and invest money and get rich renting apartments to other people. That would create a millionaire. I've got too many of those. You see, that's the problem. So we don't think like that anymore. Instead, the way we think is that if somebody's successful, that's wrong, and they better make us successful.
Front of mind for most is taxes. Left-leaning Democrats, led by New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, want to see an increase on income tax of millionaires and on wealthy corporations. Governor Kathy Hochul continues to maintain a tax hike with an increasingly stagnant economy, and as wealthy people are leaving New York is not an option. Her approach has angered the left wing of her party.
What person says, I will not negotiate at all raising revenue from the wealthiest New Yorkers who actually have the revenue to spend, but I'm going to harm the people who don't have revenue to spend and have been feeling the brunt of the decisions we made prior.
Okay, well then, whose fault is it that you guys have made such stupid decisions that you've impoverished your own populace? Whose fault is it that you have decided not to build housing for people? Whose fault is it that you decided to make it so expensive for a business to operate here that when people go to the grocery store, the milk costs $10? Whose fault is that? Who's bearing the brunt of those decisions? Every single person in the city. And the city council and our local leaders, instead of looking at themselves and saying, hey, maybe we should change, they say, no, we need to change in somebody else's pocket. It's pathetic. It really is. It's sad, and it shows a lack of understanding of basic economics. But these leaders, I can't blame them.
And to add insult to injury, with everything that's going on with these communistic policies, these socialistic policies to erode the tax base, to create all these social programs and make the society actually less productive, not more productive, short-term and long-term. These are the same types of this is the same type of mentality that leads to telling people, you know, Trump's bad. Trump must be bad going into Iran. It must be a war crime. All these ultra liberals think the same way. Overtax, create a bunch of social programs that most people don't need. The society would be better off without them. And they have a mindset where they're eroding religion. They're eroding family creation because it costs too much. They want to promote abortions. Over 65 million fetuses have been aborted since 1972 in the United States alone. 65 million. Now think about that for a second. All right? We have 300 and, depending on the census number you use, but 300, we have about 330 million people in the United States. So we have over 65 million fetuses that have been aborted since 1972 in the United States. Approximately 20% of the population of today. 20%. Still think that ultra liberals are for family creation? What about the promoting of all of this gender fluidity and homosexuality? Do you think that's family creation? Not so much. Do you think the demonization of our country, where just have open borders and just have a super multicultural, anything can go society? Do you think that's really going to be holding cultural norms? Not so much. So it's not just taking away your money, taking away your property, but it's eroding God, country, and family. 65 million fetuses aborted, killed. 20% of the population of today in the United States. From 1972 to now. The number is even higher. I'm actually lowballing it with saying 65 million. Still think ultraliberalism is the right policy to go? Not so much.
They represent voters who think like this. These people didn't get elected talking like this if they weren't being voted in by people who think the exact same thing.
That is why the Democratic Party is where it is.
The mayor's office has made clear that without more money from Albany, it will have to raise property taxes and potentially peel back city services. But Republicans are saying enough is enough, and the city and state need to control their spending. They feel that any tax increase, even one on New Yorkers who have the most, will hurt everyone.
Because even if they tax the rich, it will basically force people that have many means to move out of New York. And if they move out of New York, then in essence, we will lose their property taxes, we will lose their income taxes, we will lose their sales tax.
Yeah, all of that's going to happen. Now, I understand that there have been other times in New York City's recent history when people like Mayor Sorhan and Mamdani were in the state assembly, but you've got to understand something. During those periods of time, New York was not run by somebody who promised higher taxes, who promised communism, ran on that and got elected, to people cheering in the streets who are now marching around with Soviet flags. I mean, this is not the New York City that existed when previous tax increases came across. There were people who said, oh, well, I got a tax increase now, but, things could change. Politics, the pendulum swings both ways, but here's the problem. Once the pendulum goes far enough to the left, the people that have a problem with that, what do? Do they stick around in a city like New York to be punished? No, they leave. So when the pendulum tries to swing back, it doesn't have as much leverage because the voters that oppose the policies that brought about the higher taxes, well, they're not around to oppose them anymore. So as things go left, they get progressively more entrenched in this mindset that other people's money is the only pathway to prosperity in the capital of capitalism. What do you think about that? I'll see you in the next video.
All right, we're going to play another Mad Cow video to prove my point about ultra-socialism destroying America. All right? But before we do, let me just plug the probiotics that I have. You can get the probiotic either in a powder form or a VeggieCap form. And by taking either one every day, you're going to improve your gut biome, allow for your nutrients to be absorbed properly, reduce leaky gut syndrome, reduce the chances of having allergies. Also, by reducing leaky gut syndrome, you're reducing having inflammation at the brain level, all right? Because there's a communication between your gut and your brain through the blood-brain barrier. If your vascular system is disturbed and inflamed, it can leak into the brain. So having a good gut biome is really important, even for brain health. You'll also be able to sleep better. Your skin will improve, and you'll have better metabolism. So please go to my store and get the powdered version of the probiotic or the VeggieCap version of the probiotic. But take it every day, drink it with filtered water, super important. Good gut health is a foundation for slowing down the aging process and improving your health. All right, now this is Mad Cow, all right, from MS Now. Now, Mad Cow, what is she? She's a lesbian. She's an ultra-liberal. She's a socialist. She hates Trump. So let me think about this. Do you think that she's for family creation? No. She's for abortion. She's for killing fetuses. Is she for God? Not so much. And what about country? Do you think that she really cares about the country? I don't think so. Doesn't seem like it. So you still think that ultra-liberals are good for this country? You think ultra-liberals actually make the country more productive? She sits on her ass telling the American public on how to run their life, just like a good communist.
Intelligence Committee for 14 years. He's been the top Democrat on intelligence for nearly a decade.
Democrat? Fuck.
And that has put him at the forefront of a lot of really intense matters of national security and international intrigue. And that is why it is striking to see somebody like Senator Mark Warner now come out in the middle of this war and send a flag up a very different pole. This is the warning that Senator Warner has just hoisted. Trump is trying to override our voting system.
Trump is trying to override the voting system, but yeah, that jump diffusion in 2020 with the Dominion voting machines, that wasn't nefarious. No, not at all. Statistically, it's impossible for that to happen, but the Democrats say that everything was kosher. Oh, by the way, the jump diffusion also happened in Venezuela with voting machines. Amazing how that works. Fuck.
Longer the most pressing danger to our elections, it's increasingly evident that the greatest threat now comes from inside our own government. For months, President Trump has made his intentions clear. He's called for the federal government to take over elections, impose national rules, and override state authority. Now we're beginning to see how he may plan to do this. Allies of Trump's working in coordination with people close to the White House have circulated a draft executive order that would declare a national emergency based on false claims of foreign interference in the 2020 election. That declaration would be used to unlock sweeping presidential powers over how Americans vote. The proposal would allow the federal government to bar widely used voting methods, including mail. It would force Americans to re-register to vote on short notice. It would require proof of citizenship. It would insert federal agencies into the voter verification process in novel ways. It would attempt to override the constitutional role of states in administering elections. Senator Warner says, quote, "There is no legitimate basis for such an emergency." That is not the point. The point is that the Trump administration could manufacture an impression of an emergency, creating a pretext for intervention. Joining us now is Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, I'm really pleased to have you with us tonight. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'm struck by, as I said, you sort of hoisting this warning right now in the middle of so many overlapping crises that we are having, including the multiple crises surrounding this war in Iran. What is the sense of urgency that you have?
Trump is going to just take over the whole world, and we got to have no kings protest because he runs roughshod. He's a dictator.
About raising this alarm right now?
Well, first of all, Rachel, I wish I could rebut what you said about the cybersecurity threats, the war, or the detention centers, but you are right on all of those. A year ago, people would say to me, "Hey, Senator, do you think there's going to be free elections in 26 and 28? And I kind of blew it off. A year later, I'm terrified that this administration is going to try to create some incident that can allow federal intervention. You know, we've seen the president already say he wants the feds to take over, or Republicans to take over elections. We've heard his former Secretary of National Homeland Security say we want the right people to vote for the right people. We have seen, you know, this executive order.
Yeah, I'm sure that I'm sure the policy stated Republicans controlling the voting system. See, this is classic liberal bullshit from the Democrats. They frame it to scare the people that are watching, the few people that are watching MS Now, to scare them. A lot of them are elderly, so, you know, they don't know any better. And they get, oh my God, Trump's doing that. Yeah, I'm sure the executive order said Republicans are going to control the votes. See, this is classic misrepresentation of what's happening. What about all the nefarious things that have been happening, not just in 2020, but in other elections? And oh, by the way, we still don't fully understand the assassination attempts on Trump. I'm just saying, you know, the Democratic Party has a tendency to do things illegally.
Out this morning saying he wanted all the states to turn over their voter files to his DHS secret formula that would screen who could be an appropriate voter. Totally absurd. But I am terrified because these policies are so unpopular that this crowd may try to do anything, including intervening in our election with federal forces, troops at the ballot, or disinformation that could actually be catastrophic. Because if we get off the notion of a free and fair election, I don't know how we ever return to that.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this is because of your intimate knowledge about the oversight of intelligence matters. And it really does seem like there's a prospect here, particularly with what Tulsi Gabbard's been doing and the other ways they've been talking about intelligence matters in relation to the election. It does seem possible that they're going to...
This is a trial balloon. This is a trial balloon that she's doing on MS Now. Mad Cow is doing a trial balloon, and they're going to start trying to convince the public that if the Republicans win, then it must have been nefarious activity with the voting system, because America wants Democrats. Don't you know? You look at the whole history of the Democratic Party. It's about thievery, slavery. Oh, They signed in the Civil Liberties Acts. Do you really think that they are really for civil liberties? And they want to keep blacks on the urban plantation and vote Democrat? Nothing's changed with the Democrats since the KKK. Nothing. Except you got more lesbians.
Some form of bogus intelligence about some sort of threat, about some sort of pretextual emergency that allows them to take over elections in some extraordinary way. If they misuse intelligence, if they make up some phony, bogus intelligence threat or deliberately misconstrue some piece of intelligence to make that kind of a claim, does the structure of oversight in the intelligence community allow for anybody who knows that it's bogus to actually blow the whistle, to actually say, hey, we know this isn't right?
I would hope so. And I believe at the outset, Tulsi Gabbard, who has no role in domestic activities, was down in Fulton County, Georgia, when they seized those ballots. Tulsi Gabbard, who was supposed to be looking at foreign interference, seized voting machines in Puerto Rico illegally, I believe. For the first time in 10 years, this administration has not acknowledged any foreign influence threat, even though they're out there. So the idea they would pick some threat, real or conceived, to use it as an excuse, I think we have to be very conscious of. So I've been trying to meet with former military leaders, intelligence leaders, law enforcement, just to say, if you see something that comes out that's a crock, speak up and rebut. And the press, frankly, needs to do it as well. This is about the heart of our democracy, whether it's going to be free and fair elections. If we don't stand up for that, and my fear is, as somebody who's been criticized by you many times for being way too bipartisan, but I've lost a lot of faith that my Republican partners in the Senate will stand up for our basic fair voting and democracy.
Mad cow.
Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat in the Senate Intelligence Committee. Sir, I know.
Just put someone on your show to talk. Put someone on your show, Mad Cow, to speak negative about Trump and put that little seed of doubt in the elderly, because that's the only ones that are watching your show. So they're confused and they're scared, because people that are older, they get scared easily. You know why? Because they really don't have any recourse to be able to defend themselves. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. This is 1,000 times stronger. It's an antioxidant than vitamin C. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and also avocado oil. C60, you take a teaspoon a day every day. It'll soak up free radicals, reduce stress, bring down inflammation, rev up the health of your mitochondria, and you'll have more ATP, more energy. You'll be able to soak up free radicals and reduce plaque formation at the vascular level. You'll also improve the health of your neurons. By having more ATP and healthier mitochondria, you'll be able to produce more neurotransmitters. And over time, guess what? Those dendritic connections improve and you think faster. You have better memory. You have better blood flow to help with the health of your neurons. Your endocrine system and your immune system will be boosted up. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. And don't be a mad cow, because that's really bad. All right, BBC, 12 minutes ago. Trump warns the whole civilization will die tonight.
The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps has warned they would retaliate beyond the Middle East and deprive Washington and its allies of oil and gas if the United States crossed what it called red lines. There is so much to dissect with our chief international correspondent, Lis Doucette, and Kazra Naji from BBC Persian. Kazra, really good to have you with us. Thank you for coming down and joining us. A whole civilization will die tonight never to be brought back again. Intense pressure from President Trump now. How does Iran tend to react to threats like this?
We will have to wait and see. This whole civilization is going to die. It's pretty sort of dramatic, this. And obviously, a lot of Iranians are very concerned that what might happen tonight after this deadline is over, praying that there will be some kind of a deal beforehand. There are signs that things might be moving in that direction. There are Iranian ambassador in Islamabad has been tweeting positively, saying that these talks are at a critical and sensitive stage, as he puts it. So there are diplomatic efforts by the Pakistanis to mediate, and others, I must say. But for the moment, there seems to be something moving. Maybe, hopefully, something will come out. And in fact, what President Trump is saying is basically he's hoping that something will, in fact, happen on the diplomatic front in the next few hours before the 8 o'clock deadline that he has set.
Please, your thoughts on this comment, a whole civilization will die tonight, and also the fact that he keeps talking, President Trump, about what he calls a complete and total regime change, which is not the case in Iran.
President Trump keeps ramping up the rhetoric, seeming to confirm that he has this idea that if he scares Iran enough in its leadership, if the threats get louder and louder, that Iran will eventually buckle. He doesn't seem to have anyone around him, which makes it clear that Iran will not buckle under these threats. It's watching this as the world is shocked by some of his statements, which at the very least are violations of international humanitarian law, and if carried out are possible war crimes. Those more experienced negotiators would say that if he really did want to make progress in negotiations, if he was really serious about it, he would quietly move away military assets away from the region to send a signal to Iran that he wants serious negotiations and that he's not really bent on escalation and using this all as a subterfuge, as he did in June 2025 and as he did in February. There are other ways that President Trump could act as the U.S. President and Commander-in-Chief to get Iran to change its behavior, to get Iran to try to show flexibility on its side. But by using the language of surrender and by giving documents the 15-point plan, which is akin to a surrender document, that's not the way to negotiate. Well, President Trump was asked about his deal yesterday. What did he say? I want a deal that's acceptable to me. That is never going to work as a negotiating stance, and it just underlines not just his fundamental misunderstanding of Iran, but never mind that he wrote a book, The Art of the Deal, that a fundamental misunderstanding of how to conduct negotiations.
I've just been sent a tweet from Mr. Pezeshkian, the president. More than 14 million proud Iranians have so far registered to sacrifice their lives to defend Iran. I too have been and will remain devoted to giving my life for Iran. So, Cottrell, that's the first bit of official response we've had, I think, to what President Trump has had to say.
Yes, and obviously the Iranians think that they have the upper hand in this war.
Because of the Strait of Hormuz.
Because of the Strait of Hormuz and the fact that they can inflict a serious damage to the economies of the Persian Gulf countries in the south, the Arab countries in the south of the Persian Gulf, and that is up to a point is correct in the sense that for the moment the strait is closed, and Iran has still the capability to attack these targets, economic targets, anywhere they want in the region. And
don't forget, they're the ones that started this bullshit. They funded the terrorism in the region. They have been threatening Western civilizations that they're going to set the world on fire and that they were going to kill the great Satan and the little Satan. They were moving towards having a nuclear weapon, and I think they have biological weapons. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex This is really important if you're 40 years of age or older, to boost up your ATP levels, increase the health of your mitochondria, rev up your metabolism, and protect your neurons. Super important. Take it if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female. Also, individuals that are 40 years of age or older, your pancreas doesn't work as well. I don't care how healthy you are. So, digestive enzyme complex will help to reduce the load on your pancreas, to allow your pancreas to rest. And you can break up your proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, and be able to absorb your nutrients with less stress on your digestive system. Digestive enzyme complex also has bromelain to break up clots, and it has enzymes to help break up glycoproteins. Super important during the cold season. And that is why I said take digestive enzyme complex during the crisis of 2020. Again, I'm never wrong. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will also benefit from digestive enzyme complex because it will help you to break up your pre or post-workout fuel source and reduce the load on your pancreas. Super important. Because if you have less inflammation at the pancreatic level, your pancreas will have more life. All right? Don't be a Steve Jobs, okay? You don't want to be a Steve Jobs. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the digestive enzyme complex to help with your pancreatic health, and get the vitamin B complex to rev up your metabolism, boost up those energy levels, and protect your neurons. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Is a serious threat, and I would have thought President Trump and his advisors are pretty much aware that if he starts a huge campaign of attack on critical infrastructure in Iran, then Iran does have the capability to attack critical infrastructure in the Gulf countries. And that is going to be uppermost in the minds of many people, not just in Iran, but in the Gulf countries tonight and today. That all this might sort of lead to a huge escalation that they hadn't foreseen.
This tweet from Mr. Pezeshkian doesn't suggest, though, that he's prepared in any way to compromise. And responding to President Trump's comment saying more than 14 million proud Iranians have so far registered to sacrifice their lives to defend Iran. I too have been and will remain devoted to giving my life for Iran. For a moment, just if we think about this deadline, Lise, there are some people saying, well, he has deflected before President Trump. He's extended these deadlines. He's done it quite a few times since the conflict started. Maybe that will happen again. But I know, Kazra, you've been hearing from people inside Iran. It's so desperate there. They're filling up water cans with water. They're worried about the infrastructure being attacked. Some people have tried to leave their homes. And even people go to pharmacies looking for iodine in case there's...
Yes, I find this pretty sort of surreal, actually. When I read the report yesterday in one of the local newspapers in Bushehr in southern Iran, 10 kilometers away from this city of 300,000, is Iran's only nuclear power plant that was built by the Russians there on the shore of the Persian Gulf. And the report, the local newspaper report, was saying that people are, and pharmacies are inundated by people rushing for iodine tablets because they fear that there may be some radioactive spread of radioactive radiation there should there be an attack on that power plant. And that power plant came on the fourth time. It was the fourth attack in the last 5 weeks in Iran. So, and the Russians, who have a lot of technicians and staff there, they the other day they pulled out 200 of them from the power plant, saying that the developments around the power plant and the fact that it was attacked 4 times in 4 or 5 weeks was, and in their words, aligned with the worst case scenario. So things are really sort of, scary actually, in many respects. And people are obviously, not just in Boucher and other places, are pretty scared, pretty stressed, pretty angry, and they don't know what they have done to deserve all this.
Liz, you get the sense, of course, that we are counting down to this deadline tonight. So what's happening? Because in terms of diplomacy, in capitals all over the world, there will be the sense of urgency, particularly now we've had these comments from President Trump. But take us to Pakistan and what exactly we know, because that seems to be the best chance at the moment of something being agreed. Like, what's happening?
Listen, if our viewers were with us for the past hour when we saw J.D. Vance at this press conference with Viktor Orban in Hungary, and he teases the journalist there, he takes out of his pocket on live television and says, "Oh, I just received a text from Steve Witkoff," which of course is about what's happening in the negotiations. He says, "What time is it in America?" And of course, you could smile at that, but the fact of the matter is that, as we discussed before, the Iranians made it clear that the channel with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner for them was burnt. They see it as a Trojan horse when they were involved in negotiations in June of 2025, in February of this year. Both times, the diplomacy, the progress of the talks was shattered by American-backed Israeli attacks. So they see Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner as too close to Israel. So they had asked for J.D. Vance to become involved. And we hear this from Pakistan, from Pakistani officials who, as you say, have become the main channel of mediation. Egypt and Turkey are also involved, Oman, and to a certain extent, and that J.D. Vance is involved in these indirect talks. If so, as the clock ticks down, what is he doing in Hungary? That doesn't seem to send a signal that he is as focused on what is happening and the need to make quick progress. But we do know, we heard that statement when the first reports came through of a proposal from the mediators for a 45-day ceasefire and then a move to a permanent end to the war between 10 to 15 days. Iran rejected it, doesn't want a ceasefire. It had a ceasefire last year. It just was precursor to yet another war. But the reports which came out said that the Pakistanis had been up all night talking with J.D. Vance, talking with Kushner, talking to the Iranians, trying to push this forward. And we have to underline is not really completely clear what is the situation in Iran, where some of the negotiators we understand, including the Speaker of Parliament, including the President, Masoud Pezeshkian, who you just quoted from, that they've been given immunity from assassination, Foreign Minister Al-Akchi as well, so that they can continue the talks, but they can't meet in these kinds of circumstances because they could come under attack. And of course, their security doctrine is being made up as they go along now.
Liz, thank you for that. And Cottrell, just before we let you go, of course, the strikes have continued, Iran striking, as well as many strikes from the IDF today, as well inside Iran. But what are you hearing from Saudi Arabia? Because there are some reports on FARS, the Iranian news agency, that a huge petrochemical plant has been hit there, which would be very significant.
Yes, that's what I saw on the internet, on Twitter, actually, a few moments ago, before I came here. There were reports that the biggest petrochemical complex in Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest in the world, has come under attack. Part of it is on fire. And that is along basically what we expected, in the sense that Iranians had said that if our infrastructure comes under attack, we will attack other people's infrastructure in the region, America's, the US's allies in the region. But as I say, all this is escalation in a major way. But at the same time, I'm just seeing that, as J.D. Vance has been saying, that we feel confident we can get a response from Iranians by 8 tonight. So he is expecting, or is hopeful, that the diplomatic efforts that Liz was talking about might come to some kind of a fruition. But we just have to wait and see, really. whether something decent is going to come out of this. It doesn't look like it.
Well, I have to just say, we've just got a senior source close to Reuters. It's just come through in the past 10 seconds or so, saying there are no negotiations with the US. This is a senior Iranian source. No negotiations with the US, which wants Iran to surrender under pressure. So we will continue the discussions as this deadline moves.
But the Iranian ambassador in Israel.
Right now, the oil futures are trading at just below 115, but it is lunchtime, and usually lunchtime liquidity starts to drop a little bit. So we'll see when lunchtime ends at about 1 to 1:30. I suspect that oil will continue to go up, especially with individuals trying to position themselves before the strike that will happen most likely tonight. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This toothpaste has no fluoride. It will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, improve the health of your gum line, reduce inflammation at your gum line, and with good oral hygiene, it will help to improve your cardiovascular health and your valvular health. In addition, structural nano silver toothpaste will neutralize. This is why it's super important to use it every day, but especially during the cold season. Get a few tubes of this for your household. It has the structural nano silver. Use it every day to improve your oral hygiene. Also, the structural nano silver gels. You can get it in tube form or in the quick dispenser, but you use it the same way. You can put it on your skin daily as the topical daily skincare. You can put it on a wound to help heal it quicker. And if you're not feeling well because of the cold season, or someone around you is not feeling well because of the cold season, guess what? Put it on your hands, around your eyes, around your ears, around your mouth, around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. It's a great way to neutralize and to create a barrier. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gels that are dual purpose. Have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need them. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Alrighty. Let's continue on. So, let's see here. I wanted to take a look at Bloomberg. Where are they talking on Bloomberg?
A U.S. official told him that the thinking in the White House has shifted from can we get there to can we get there by 8 o'clock tonight? It's a good question, and it's one that markets certainly are grappling with. So let's check on where they are right now. Down on stocks. Interestingly, oil not seeing as much movement as you might expect with this kind of threat out there in the universe. So we turn to Christine Aquino, Bloomberg Managing Editor for Markets Live now. Christine, this is a market that has in many ways been conditioned to President Trump backing down from threats. That's why the taco trade continues to kind of return to the narratives. When you look at the market today, are you seeing a market that may be expecting that outcome?
Yeah, beneath the surface, Kaleo, the declines across indexes that we're seeing today, we have actually seen, for instance, the S&P 500 backing away from its worst levels of the day. Just before I got here, I was actually just writing about the fact that it has halved its decline for the day, and we have seen energy shares leading that charge. And so, it is very much reflective of a market that perhaps is giving less credence to what President Trump's rhetoric over Iran has been, especially because, as you pointed out, it has been burned before when it comes to the president backing down from previous inflammatory statements to something a little bit more sanguine. And perhaps beneath the hood of these market declines, that's essentially what we're seeing today.
Well, so I guess it's going to be a market that is either potentially going to be on the wrong side of the trade if the president actually follows through on the threat this time, or potentially those who have remained more bullish will be redeemed. Christine, I wonder what you make of the timing here, that he's talking about 8 p.m. Eastern, well after the close, well before the opening bell. Obviously, futures will be open, Asia will be up and trading. When we have seen this president so frequently target his communications to around those critical hours, markets opening up and markets getting ready to close, if this market doesn't have answers at 4 p.m., how do you expect people to be positioned for the day ahead, or what are the indications?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Haley. You'd expect that investor would probably want to just be lightening up on whatever position they have, especially because it's such a binary outcome, right? And so, if it's coming after hours, we have, of course, global markets that will likely react to this primarily in Asia. So they're going to be the ones getting the first brunt of the reaction, and whatever that we get in terms of news or headlines or commentary past the 8 p.m. deadline, that's probably the first protocol for markets to get a reaction. What has prevailed throughout this whole back and forth between the U.S. and Iran in terms of the rhetoric is this sort of calendar effect that we've seen in U.S. equities, where we've seen stocks start the week one direction. This week it was a positive start of the week, and then that direction kind of backtrack and reverse on itself as the week goes on. And we're seeing that today, of course, with the declines. And so I wonder if that kind of does prevail this week, regardless of the outcome that we've seen, just because it is increasingly a market where traders don't want to be exposed to risk heading into a weekend.
Well, and how much does traders' expectations of the reaction function of policymakers factor into that as well, Christine? We had the New York Fed President John Williams sitting down with Bloomberg's Michael McKee today, saying that he doesn't think the inflation story changes very much, even in light of this war. Is that ultimately what may matter the most?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it is still kind of one of the more tradable aspects of this story and this narrative, right? The eventual impact of higher oil prices on inflation and what that means for rates moving forward. Now, we've heard Federal Reserve officials, including Jerome Powell himself, downplaying the inflationary impact of higher oil prices, saying that it is transitory. But I would remind you and our listeners, Kaylee, that we've heard this tune before in 2022, and we've seen some measures of inflation and survey data getting back to those 2022 levels. And so we might be seeing or hearing a different tune from policymakers when they meet next toward the end of this month.
Yeah, transitory, the word that I think no one really is eager to see the return of, because to your point, Christine, we all know how that went the first time around. Christina Aquino, managing editor for Bloomberg's Markets Live blog. Thank you so much, of course, for updates throughout the trading day and into tomorrow as this deadline gets set to come and go. Tune in to MLive on your Bloomberg terminal for the very latest. Again, the very latest we have at this hour, at least, is reporting from Axios that there has been a glimmer of progress in negotiations with Iran as the deadline looms. Though, of course, other outlets like the New York Times have reported that Iran is currently no longer negotiating around a ceasefire with the U.S. It's a very complicated, unclear picture, and it all feeds into politics and the economy. And we'll get into the political impact of that next with our political panel here on Balance of Power.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. This is dual purpose. It's going to help to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. How does it work? Thank you for asking. It brings down the inflammation, and it helps you to control your lipid profile. It helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. And by doing that at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. And by bringing down systemic inflammation, you're boosting up your immune system. So please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. Omega-3. Omega-3 will also help with cardiovascular health. It brings down inflammation at the vascular level, and it helps you to control your lipid profile. Stack them together. It's a powerful stack. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, discount the number 5, get $5 off. Click the link in the description, go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And if you like the work that I do, all these videos are for free, all right? Please help support by being a paid member on Patreon, or you can donate on my website. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. All righty, Let's see what else is going on in the news.
Thank you very much.
With the clock ticking towards his 8 p.m. deadline, President Trump warning Iran must strike a deal now, calling on the country to end the war by tonight or face dire consequences.
I mean, complete demolition. It'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to.
The president elaborating on his profane Easter Sunday post threatening to destroy Iran's infrastructure.
Because of the power of our military. Where every bridge in Iran will be decimated, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again.
Some Democrats say making good on those threats crosses a major red line.
He's definitely threatening a war crime against the people of Iran.
But the president doesn't see it that way.
No. I hope I don't have to do it.
Mr. Trump also delivering mixed messages on negotiations, which the Iranian regime has denied are taking place.
I can tell you they're negotiating, we think, in good faith. We're going to find out.
The president insists any deal must include Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Asked yesterday if he was winding down the war.
I don't know. I can't. It depends what they do. This is a critical period.
The president and his top aides also touting the daring rescue of 2 American airmen whose F-15E was shot down by a shoulder-fired missile in Iran last week. The pilot was located first, with U.S. aircraft flying 7 hours to rescue him. The second airman was still missing, the CIA confirming he was badly injured but alive, hiding in a mountain crevice.
He scaled cliff faces, bleeding rather profusely, treated his own wounds, and contacted American forces to transmit his location.
Also in that news conference yesterday, the president complained that one of the most challenging aspects of striking a deal with Iran is simply communicating with their leaders after weeks of war and targeted killings. The process, he said, is akin to passing notes, largely through mediators like Pakistan and Oman. A time-consuming effort as that deadline grows closer.
Right.
You're on the White House, Stuart. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
$12.40 on Wall Street. I'm Amy Morris. Stocks now paring back some of those losses. Brent crude giving back some of its gains. We check the market all day long. Here at Bloomberg, the S&P 500 down about 0.5%. NASDAQ down 0.6%. The Dow down about 0.6%. 10-year Treasury yield at 4.35%. The 2-year yield at 3.85%. WTI is still pretty high, up 2.5%, around $115 a barrel. The Brent crude is now little change on the downside, hovering right around $109 per barrel. Bitcoin is down 2.2%, around $68,000, and the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is down 0.1%. And U.S. private payrolls rose an average of 26,000 per week in the 4-week period ending March 21st. That's according to a preliminary estimate from ADP. Calvin Say with BNP Paribas tells Bloomberg Surveillance a 50,000 non-farm payroll rate is perfectly acceptable.
And the reason why I'm telling you this is because we're at full employment. Everyone has a job. If everyone has a job and you're making decent wages, people are going to feel pretty okay about that.
Say says as long as productivity in the U.S. continues at a sustainable pace, the U.S. will continue to see growth. New York Fed President John Williams says his outlook for underlying price pressures in the U.S. is largely unchanged, despite his expectation that higher energy costs will boost overall inflation. He says he's slightly downgraded his forecast for economic growth in the U.S. in 2026 to a range of 2 to 2.5%, and he sees higher headline inflation, but he says there's no need to consider any change to the Fed's benchmark interest rate. Billionaire activist Bill Ackman has proposed a bid for Universal Music Group to increase returns on one of his hedge fund's biggest holdings. UMG is the world's largest music company, housing the likes of Taylor Swift, Drake, and Sabrina Carpenter. UMG shares up the most in more than 3 years, 11% higher. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Amy Morris. That's Bloomberg Business Flash. We go back to Balance of Power with Daily Lines.
All right, Amy Morris, thank you so much. Checking out these deadline day markets, which right now seem like they aren't totally sure President Trump is going to follow through on what he's threatened, which is to attack critical civilian infrastructure inside Iran if no deal with Iran is reached by 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Reminding you all of the words of President Trump himself that he posted on Truth Social earlier this morning. A whole civilization will die tonight, he says, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. Probably is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. How probable is it that this will actually happen? As Axios is reporting that there has been some progress made in negotiations in the last 24 hours, at the very same time that the New York Times reports Iran has walked away, is no longer negotiating around a ceasefire with the United States. It is very unclear what is happening here, not just on the Iranian side, but on the U.S. side as well. Even the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, can't tell us what may happen. She just told Fox News in an interview that only Trump knows where things stand on Iran. But does he actually know? I would remind you of this exchange in the briefing room at the White House yesterday.
And we've heard a range of those kind of messages. So which is it? Are you winding this down? Are you
I can't
escalating?
tell you. I don't know. I can't. It depends what they do. This is a critical period. They have a period of, well, till tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
I can't tell you. I don't know. I doubt our political panel knows for sure either, but we appreciate their
It's
analysis.
being disingenuous, what you just said. Of course, Bloomberg, the ultra fucking liberals, they hate Trump. Every single one of these reporters hate Trump. Now, she's disingenuous because he's basically saying that depending on what they do, depends on what he does. It's completely a reactionary situation. And that it's like Schroeder's cat. You got to look in the box to see if it's alive or not. They have to make a decision. And if they make the decision, then a certain thing happens. Now, you would think that Bloomberg would be able to figure this out because of all the option trading that happens. And option trading is all about probabilities. And, you can have one state at a probability and another state at another probability. And you have to wait for an event to happen before it comes to fruition. That's what Trump said. But of course, she doesn't want to say that. She knows better. She's being disingenuous. Another fucking liberal on Bloomberg.
On this, all the same as we turn to them now. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano are with us, of course, Bloomberg politics contributors. Rick, a partner at Stone Court Capital, and Republican strategist. Jeannie, a Democratic visiting fellow, a democracy visiting fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center and Democratic analyst. Welcome to you both. Rick, just how problematic is it for the commander-in-chief to be saying he doesn't know what's going to happen at the very same time he is threatening to directly kill a whole civilization? A whole civilization will die tonight?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you got to set aside this whole, killing an entire civilization. I mean, I don't know how much everybody has followed Donald Trump through his career, but hyperbole is his friend. And, he uses words in a way that nobody else would ever think of using them, but they usually have a different definition to him than they do to the rest of us. So I'm going to set aside the fact that the president, on behalf of the American people, are going to commit genocide tonight at 8 o'clock and think more in terms of why we have confusion about what's going to happen tonight in general. And that is that it's very hard to talk to a bunch of Iranian officials who think they're going to get assassinated anytime. And they have a really good reason to believe that because virtually all their friends have been killed by either the Israelis or the Americans over the course of the last 4 weeks. And so starting with that, communication isn't as easy as it would normally be. in a negotiation like this. If you believe the reports, somewhere in between, they seem to be on the verge of a deal to there's no negotiations is somewhere where we find ourselves between now and 8 o'clock tonight. It would not surprise me that the president doesn't declare victory and say that they've got a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz without that deal being completely cooked. But he keeps his finger off the trigger. He walks back some of this hot rhetoric that he's had, and he buys another day, maybe only 24 hours, to keep the heat on the Iranians to come up with a deal. I think if we find out that there's planning to be another negotiating session in person, potentially, as reporting has indicated, Islamabad, then you've got a situation where you might be able to unravel some of the violence that's currently going on. That being said, attacks happened today by both the Israelis and the U.S. contingent, and Iran continues to target soft targets in the region to continue to keep the heat on everybody. So if anybody knows what's going to happen tonight, call Poly Markets and place a bet, because this could be the big one.
Well, and Rick, your point is well taken that you can't always take President Trump literally when it comes to his words. And yes, often hyperbole does play a role. But Gene, when you take it together, the statement of a whole civilization will die tonight after the president has directly said, we will target civilian infrastructure, power plants, potentially even water infrastructure, desalination plants. These are things that do have consequences to the more than 90 million people in Iran. Because we'd be looking at a president where even if it's not absolute mass destruction.
So what? That society needs to rise up and overthrow the theocratic regime in the IRGC. The world is at a crossroad. We cannot continue down the same path that has been happening for the last 47 years. There has to be change. Positive change. And if it takes knocking them into the Stone Age to do it, so be it. They've had ample amounts of time to get their shit together.
In terms of targeting civilians, it's still having serious humanitarian consequences if he decides to follow through with this.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that all of everything he's going to be hitting has dual purpose. And we're setting the stage that if we need to put ground troops into theater, we have a higher chance of success. See, people have a hard time on Bloomberg to understand this idea. You have a set of things that could happen. There's different probabilities. And once some sort of a news or event comes to fruition, the optionality collapses, the wave function collapses, and new optionality from that new point is developing, is part of the landscape with new probabilities and new paths. And you don't know which path it'll be. It'll be based on what happens. And this is the reason why you see price curves going a little bit crazy, right? You don't know where it's going to actually go at any given tick or at any given minute. There are certain probabilities. Same thing with your life. If you're like 10 years old, are you going to really plan your whole life out and it's going to be just like you planned it? Of course not. There's a certain stochasticness of your life. The same thing here. It's all about option trading. No, but stupid people think that, well, what's your move? Well, your move could be 3 different potentialities with different probabilities. Stupid people can't think that way. People that want to be disingenuous can't think that way.
Absolutely, if he decides to follow through with it. I mean, let's be clear on his language. We now are sitting here with the President of the United States waking up this morning and threatening genocide, threatening to destroy an entire civilization. Whether he follows through with that or not.
That's a president and someone from New York that's saying he's going to knock out their modern way of life. Our modern way of life is heavily predicated on mobility and energy, electricity. You knock out a civilization, you knock out their electrical grid and their ability to move around. They're no longer living in the 21st century. They're living in the 16th century. That's what he meant. That's what he meant. Okay? Now, I know you're a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School for Ash Center of Democracy. Too bad they didn't say constitutional republic, because a democracy is not something you want. You want a constitutional republic because that protects your property. A pure democracy doesn't protect your property. But she knows better because she's a fellow over at the Harvard Kennedy Center, the Kennedy School. Yeah, she knows better. Of course, she knows that Trump is talking in hyperbole. He's from New York. I mean, what the fuck's wrong with her?
Has said that publicly. And that is just a reminder of the levels and depths to which the United States has sunk. Could you imagine any other president or leader from any other country?
Can you imagine any other president actually getting the job done? See, here, Trump is in a space at the perfect opportunity with his selection set, with a reconstituted military, to be able to get the job done. All the other presidents failed, including Trump 1.0. Stupid liberal, once again failing.
Military leaders that we can imagine, those are the kinds of people who say that they are going to destroy an entire civilization and have a countdown to an 8 o'clock time frame.
What's wrong with that?
This is where we are.
What's wrong with that? What is wrong with that? Do you think that the theocratic regime would do the same to us? They said they would. What the fuck's wrong with you? Are you paying attention? That we're the bad guy? That the United States are the evil one? Time to get on America first. The America team here. We need to be proactive. Not the America First pacifist, but the America First active. The hell? I mean, it's so dumb what she's saying. So dumb. Yeah, we're the ones at fault here. What's wrong with knocking our enemy into the Stone Age? What's wrong with that? Sounds like Julius Caesar would do it. No, all the ultra liberals that are for globalization, they want to play patty cake with the Ayatollah. Let him have a nuclear weapon. Everything's going to be okay. Suicidal empathy right here. Right here. Suicidal empathy. Right here. Slave morality from Nietzsche. Playing in real time. Harvard Kennedy School fellow. Fuck.
The States, and what is equally distressing is that so few people, with a few exceptions, have stood up, who are people in power in the United States, still in office, have stood up and condemned this. We have Ron Johnson, who has said, I hope the president doesn't really mean this. We've had a few other people, but
they stood up for this because if it fails, if Trump fails on the battlefield, then these people are going to rise up and say they, positioned themselves and they knew better. Most of our representatives in Congress and in the Senate are staying quiet because, again, they're using optionality. They're looking, Trump could be successful with this and Trump could be unsuccessful with this. And it is better in terms of game theory to just shut up for their political survival. Let's continue with the Harvard Kennedy School fellow.
The left, but very few people in his party, and certainly very few people in the military or even in the media who have stood up and called this for what it is. It is a call to genocide. And again, we don't know. Apparently, even the press secretary doesn't know if he.
You need to kill your enemy. You got to stop, surrounding yourself with the legality. Hello, Jag. Can we bomb our enemy? Or do we have to worry about war crimes? Can we destroy Iran without worrying about war crimes? Can we knock out power plants without being worried about war crimes? I mean, come on. Are we gonna literally? These are the types of people that want open borders. These are the types of people that want to reduce our hegemonic projection in the world. These are the types of people that think that just pushing paper in the paper belt is going to make the world so much safer. No, the reality of the situation is this. To make the world safer, we have to kill our enemies. Sometimes killing your enemies, you got to do things that you may not necessarily want to do. It's not going to be humane. A lot of people are going to die. There's going to be collateral damage. It's going to affect the world economy, but it needs to be done. Because guess what? If it was done 47 years ago, if it was done 30 years ago, if it was done 20 years ago, if it was done 5 years ago, it would have cost less money and less casualties.
But that's almost beside the point right now. He said it. What I think this reflects, in actuality, is Donald Trump's desperation. He understands there are no good options for him or the United States in this. He understands not just the U.S. economy, the world economy is on the line. And in fact, I think his presidency is on the line. That is what we've seen. And he woke up Easter morning with that vulgar Truth Social. He's followed it up today.
First of all, George Washington swore a lot. More than Trump. George Washington, our first president. George Washington wasn't that successful on the battlefield. The Continental Congress wanted to kick him out as general. Don't bet against Trump. He's blessed. And don't bet against the United States. But the Harvard Kennedy School fellow, visiting fellow, must know better. Yeah, she knows better. Trump's a bad guy. But yet Trump is actually acting more like George Washington. Maybe she should read a history book.
With threats of genocide, these are all signs of a desperate person who understands very well he doesn't have good options. He goes up this escalation ladder. It's not going to result in an open Strait of Hormuz. It will result in a lot of death and destruction and further economic distress in the United States and around the world. The president knows that, and that's what we're seeing. Could he walk away from this? Absolutely. He has moved the goalpost in the last 2 weeks, Kaylee, by my count, at least 5 times.
And so she basically is making the presentation that if Trump goes after Iran and knocks them out, it's a war crime. He's a bad guy. But if he does the opposite, he chickened out. See, she tries to position herself, because she's a Democrat, to blame him on no matter what way he goes. Trump, all you got to do, President Trump, if you're listening, all right, just take my advice. Just get the job done. Don't worry about the international community, and sure as hell don't worry about people from Harvard Kennedy School. Most of them are dipshits. Literally, the Harvard Kennedy School, who produced so many people that are in politics today, actually fucked up this world.
But he may do that, and I hope he does that, but it doesn't make any of what's happened in the last few hours any better.
Well, and that moving of the goalpost, Rick, is something you were speaking of too, that you could see this plausibly being an outcome in which the president just extends the deadline. Once again, it would be the fourth time now. But at what point does that become too damaging to the United States' credibility, to his own credibility, for him to continue doing so?
You can't kick the can down the road.
In context of, how this war has been defined from day one. I mean, we had very loose objectives, no real strategy going in. It was a war completely of our choice and Israel's. Yet we...
No strategy, yet the war plan, the strategic war plan was prepared 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Now it was updated based on new intelligence, but it was drafted 5 years ago. What the fuck is this guy saying? There was no strategy. Yet Hegseth, Rubio, Trump, they all said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They must, their military must be degraded. That's the strategy. You may not like it, but it's the strategy. What? See, this is the problem with these people. They think they are so high and mighty. They're so high and mighty. He's Stone Court Capital LP. He's one of the partners. Would you want to have him manage your portfolio? Really? Where he can't discern what the word strategy means? He can't understand that the military actually had this drafted up for 5 years? 5 years. Well, wait a minute. That was during Biden's administration. Wow.
We didn't have really clearly defined objectives in the initial attack. And so the fact that it has now morphed into fighting over opening the Strait of Hormuz, which was never an issue to begin with. The Strait of Hormuz was wide open the day before we launched our attacks and Israel joined us. And so,
Now, why is Bloomberg so worried about the Strait of Hormuz? Inflation. Because with inflation, the Federal Reserve can't lower rates. Oh, and if you don't have more printed money from the Federal Reserve, you can't keep on growing the stock market. You can't get hot money from the Federal Reserve so you can invest it in Stone Court Capital. That's what this is about. I'm not wrong on this. I know how the game's played. All right? The Strait of Hormuz was a secondary issue. The primary issue was making sure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, degrade their military capability, and hopefully overthrow the IRGC and the theocratic regime. That was the main part of the strategy. The Strait of Hormuz was a secondary issue. But it's a primary issue for ones that manage money, because they get their fee every month. They get their bonus when they have more money printed by the Federal Reserve and they have their clients deposit that money into their fund. You can't do that when the Federal Reserve is increasing rates, because that's shrinking the money supply. So now we know what the issue is here. It's not about Trump as a bad guy. It's not about defanging or declawing the Ayatollah. It's making sure that you have an economic situation where the Federal Reserve lowers rates, keeps printing money, because Rick Davis gets richer when the Federal Reserve prints money. You'll get poorer because of inflation, but he'll get richer. But he's going to tell you that Trump's a bad guy. He's a fucking asshole. That's what Rick Davis is.
For all consequences of a war that started almost 6 weeks ago and are now redefining how we get out of this war. And I do think that it's very critical that whatever the president does, that he achieves the one objective that's now as a result of the war, and that is reopening the Strait of Hormuz and allowing oil trade to begin again, and to try and tamp down some of the concerns that people have about global recessions. This is a war that's not just affecting the American people, but virtually everyone around the globe, either economically or.
Do you think he really cares about the starving children in Ethiopia? You really think that? Because if there was a global recession because of energy supplies have been disrupted, freedom of navigation disrupted, do you think people would pull out of his fund and he'd get less money to charge for his fees? Yeah, he's worried about that. So he's worried about people pulling money out of his fund, and he's worried about the Federal Reserve not lowering rates, because it's all about him. It's all about the money. How about this? How about you pay attention to what I'm saying? And that is, don't be a fool and be taken advantage of. Position yourself in a situation where you benefit from the news. That's why I do this show. That's why it takes so damn long. You think I like doing 4-hour shows almost every day? No, I don't. But that's what it takes to get the full mosaic to see what I'm seeing. So you can learn about how to position yourself to benefit, and also, hopefully, to improve your health. Because these people don't care about your health. These people don't even care about your finances. All they care about is themselves. And they position themselves in such a way where they benefit when the Federal Reserve lowers rates, and they benefit as long as the economy keeps on humming. Keep on having those high EPS, the earnings per share. You just keep on climbing, have those multiples keep on climbing. That's all they care about. They don't give a damn about their country. They don't give a damn about the perniciousness of allowing the Ayatollah to gain higher enriched uranium for nuclear warheads. They don't care about that. They want to kick the can down the road. They want Trump to fail. They want Trump to just get out and just forget about that 60% uranium. Well, maybe it's buried and it'll never be found. Maybe. Until some place in America is blown up and everyone's glowing in the dark. They didn't care about you when they shipped the jobs overseas because they benefited. Paper pushers, the paper belt, makes more money, when the Rust Belt is faltering. That's the big little secret. Cheap spatulas at Walmart through importation from China made this fucker rich.
I really, I mean, it's really quite a rapid pace to think about where we were just a month and a half ago and where we are today, and to think that somehow the Iranians have a different interest than we do in preserving life and limb and assets and property. I think, betrays the idea that at some point all the carnage combined doesn't result in a positive outcome for either people. And that's when I think you've got a shot at getting a negotiation that satisfies some. I mean, all the various positions as of 8 o'clock tonight get washed away and we start anew. And the question is, are we starting anew with a ceasefire, or are we starting anew, with a significantly upscaled war tempo?
Well, and
preferably the
that
latter.
question is when we're going to have to wait to see answered for another 7 or so hours. But Jeannie, the point Rick was just making on the economic consequences of this, not just here at home in the United States, but globally, the president has repeatedly argued that actually the economic burden that needs to be borne isn't really the United States, because we have our own energy. We can withstand this kind of energy shock coming from the Middle East, that it's really more Asia and Europe, NATO countries specifically, that have to be worried. And we heard him in that press conference yesterday, once again, with some pretty strong language on NATO. He said bye-bye. Jeannie, and I wonder if the kind of geopolitical outcomes of this conflict we have to be considering is not just the fate of Iran and of the Middle East, but of the transatlantic alliance too.
I think we do. The president has signaled this long before he entered this war, or we entered this war. I think it has gotten worse since we entered. The economic impacts, though, that the president likes to say are not going to be felt here at home are already being felt. Rick just made a really important point. The Strait of Hormuz was open before this war began. There was no threat that it was going to be closed unless we attacked, and we attacked, and now it is closed. That has raised the prices of not just oil, fertilizer, food.
Oh, so we're not supposed to attack Iran and try to overthrow the theocratic regime and stop them from having a nuclear weapon and hiding with a defense posture with all these missiles. No, we're not supposed to try to stop them funding terrorism in the Middle East and around the world. No, we're not supposed to do that. Let's forget about them having the hit on Rushdie and poking his eye out. No, let's not remember that. We got to worry about our actions caused the strait to close. This is a pacifist. This is a person that's not willing to get the job done. This is a person that is antithetical to the virtues of George Washington. But she's a visiting fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School. Ash Center, democracy. A democracy visiting fellow. Democracy, really. Wow. Look at all the virtue that she has.
And that is all being felt here at home. You know, our goods are transported on trucks that require diesel. Diesel has gone up dramatically. The price of gas, at least yesterday, Kaylee, the last time I checked, was average.
Oh, so we need to decide not to do something that's good for the world because we need cheap diesel. See? This is someone that is a pure democracy type person. She represents failure. She represents weakness. She represents suicidal empathy. She represents slave morality.
That's up from like 290 something about a month ago. So this is because we are in an international market. It doesn't matter how much we produce. Our oil prices and gas prices and the rest of our prices are still going up. So the president can pretend that he can just walk away from this and it will have little impact on us, but that is not true. Likewise, he can talk about moving away from NATO and actually try to do it, which he shouldn't do because Congress has passed a law saying he can't. But if he tries to do that, that's another destructive element of this foreign policy, because the United States needs allies. We don't have allies because we are nice and we like to be benefit other people. It's because it serves our interests, and it long has. And the president walks away from that, and that hurts all of us. So that's the position we're in. And the president continues to say things which have little semblance of reality from any sort of theory of foreign policy we know of.
All right, Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, strong stuff today. We appreciate it. The both of you Bloomberg Politics contributors that will be back with us in the second hour of Balance of Power, which starts just about 5 minutes from now as we get closer and closer to this 8 p.m. Eastern Time deadline.
Range of legitimate concerns of the United States, of Israel, but also of Iran, is absolutely essential to a lasting peace.
But Jen, we just have 30 seconds left here. You don't think a solution that would require that much work can realistically be reached and finalized by 8 p.m. tonight?
Absolutely not. And that's where, again, these deadlines that the president continues to throw out are, at the end of the day, I think, counterproductive.
Well, they may not stick, or this one may not. It's been moved 3 times.
Hopefully Trump bombs the hell out of Iran. All right? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Help support capitalism and not stupid liberalism. All right? Resveratrol will help to soak up free radicals, improve the health of your mitochondria, boost up your energy levels. You'll have more ATP. Your cellular metabolism will improve. Your youthful gene expression will improve, and it will help to get rid of senescent cells. Resveratrol will also help the basal layer for your skin, so your skin's healthier and you will look younger. This stacks really well with C60, especially for the basal layer for your skin. And lastly, get the cleanse or the Max 35. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, swish in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds and swallow it. What this will do is boost up your immune system. Improve your oral cavity by neutralizing. Also, it helps with the oral pharynx, maintains that mucosal barrier, and helps the health of the epithelial cells. Super important. This is how your immune system is boosted up innately, and it neutralizes. So your oral hygiene's better, and you're also improving your cardiovascular health, because poor oral hygiene can cause plaque formation. All right? So please go to my store, get the cleanse or the Max 35. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. And then once everything's all clear, then go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon a day. I've been taking this protocol for over 6 years. Teaspoon a day, every day. It is part of an anti-aging protocol where you take the Max 35 or cleanse, the C60, the turmeric, ashwagandha, and the lignans, the boomer boost, the multivitamin that I offer on my store, and the probiotics. You do that on a regular basis, like every day, you're radically hitting all those vectors to slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work that I do, and help support your health. If you follow my advice, you will slow down the aging process and even boost up the health of your brain. And I've been saying this stuff for 6 years for the ones that have been following me. And what I've been saying about how to improve your brain function and slow down the aging process has been proven in this book that was published this year. So I'm not wrong. And more people will start realizing that what I have to say is revolutionary. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.